Good evening. I call to order this. Are the mics on? Nope. Okay. Good evening. I call to order this regular meeting of the Verona Township Council for Monday, the 4th of May, 2026. Madam Clerk, would you please read the Open Public Meetings Act compliance statement?
The notice requirement of the Open Public Meetings Act have been satisfied with this meeting of the Township Council. Specifically, the time and date were included in the publication of the annual meeting notice. The public notice and meeting agenda was posted on the municipal building bulletin board at least 48 hours preceding the start time of this meeting. The agenda and meeting documents can be viewed online at veronanj.org/council meetings. Please take notice that pursuant to New Jersey Public Law 2025, Chapter 72, the complete text of each legal notice of the Township of Verona, including all public entities under the authority of the Township, may be obtained or viewed by the public on our official statewide registered webpage, veronanj.org/legal public notices. A public comment period will be held in the order it is listed on the meeting agenda, and instructions on how to comment will be provided at the appropriate time.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Would you call the roll, please?
Councilwoman Holland? Here. Councilwoman McGrath? Here. Councilman Roman?
Here.
Deputy Mayor McAvoy?
Present.
Mayor Tamboro?
Here.
Mayor also present tonight is Township Attorney Brian Aloya. Township Manager Kevin O'Sullivan. Deputy Township Manager Michael Kraus. Myself, Municipal Clerk Jennifer Kiernan.
Thank you. Would everybody please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, good evening, everybody. And we're going to start off with the mayor's report today. I did not see Mr. Coltre. Just get into a few of our things this evening. First of all, I had the opportunity to attend the Arbor Day celebration, not this past weekend, but one before. So I'd like to thank the Friends of the Verona Public Library who were present, the Shade Tree Commission, and the Sustainable Verona for being present, and as well as the Town Garden for providing a really nice event that day. I was unable to attend the Eagle Scout ceremony for 5 Verona youth, but Deputy Mayor McAvoy went in my place, and I congratulate all of them. We'll be bringing them to a council meeting to honor them at another time. I'd like to recognize that the Verona Fire Department and the Verona Rescue Squad went mutual aid into Belleville last night for the major 12-alarm fire incident that happened there. I was on scene in a county OEM capacity, and I know exactly the impact that Verona had, including helping to fight a house fire and transporting an injured firefighter. So thank you to all of our volunteers for doing that at a difficult incident with a lot of obstacles. We have Teacher Appreciation Week, so I'd like to thank and appreciate all of my colleagues in Verona and all teachers who reside in town as well, and thank them for all of their work on behalf of our students. And I encourage everybody else to, when you see a teacher, thank the teacher. It is my honor to name our 2 Grand Marshals for the Verona Memorial Day Parade this year. They will be Sergeant David Hildebrandt and Colonel Joseph Simonelli. And I just have some brief information on them. Mr. Hildebrandt was drafted into the U.S. Army, the Air Defense Division, and served 2 years in Alaska during the Vietnam era. He performed his duties as an E5 sergeant at the administrative level, entrusted with the protection of classified documents, including sensitive communications and radar installations. After completing his service, Mr. Hildebrandt gained employment at a steel company in Alaska, who brought him to work in New Jersey. He wanted to open his own steel company in the Caldwell area. He has been a great volunteer in Verona, and to this day serves as the crossing guard on Gould Street for HBW students who love to see him every day. And if you see him around Memorial Day or Veterans Day time, you will see him, who can impressively still fit into his uniform from many years ago. We also recognize Colonel Joseph Simonelli, Jr., who started his military career in 1987 after graduating from the United States Military Academy at West Point. and finished his Army career as Chief of Staff of the Arlington National Cemetery. Held a variety of leadership positions from small units to the top levels of the Department of Defense. We'll read his entire bio later. He is a Gulf War and Iraq War veteran participating in Operation Southern Watch, Northern Watch, and Iraqi Freedom. In addition, Colonel Simonelli has mentored applicants looking to attend West Point, and he is currently the chair of the newly formed Gavin Martin Foundation, giving back to Verona to this day. So congratulations to Sergeant Hildebrand and Colonel Simonelli. We look forward to honoring them on Memorial Day. I would be remiss if I also did not share my condolences to the family of Gary Resnick. Mr. Resnick was a frequent attendee at all of our Veterans and Memorial Day events. Just a kind and wonderful man, a real class act, and I will miss seeing him. So my condolences to the Resnick family for the loss of Gary. Finally, before going on to statement, it is Municipal Clerks Week as well. And we are blessed with a very strong municipal clerk. And I would like to read a proclamation in our clerk's honor. It reads, whereas the office of the professional municipal clerk, a time-honored and vital part of the local government, exists throughout the world. And whereas the office of the professional municipal clerk is the oldest among public servants. And whereas the office of the professional municipal clerk provides the professional link between the citizens, local governing bodies, and agencies of government at other levels. And whereas professional municipal clerks have pledged to be ever mindful of their neutrality and impartiality, rendering equal service to all. And whereas the professional municipal clerk serves as the information center on functions of local government and community. And whereas professional municipal clerks continually strive to improve the administration of the affairs of the office of the professional municipal clerk through participation in education programs, seminars, workshops, and the annual meetings of their state, provincial, county, and international professional organizations. And whereas it is most appropriate that we recognize the accomplishments of the office of professional municipal clerk. Now, therefore, I, Dr. Christopher Tamboro, Mayor of the Township of Verona, do hereby recognize the week of May 3rd through May 9th, 2026 as Professional Municipal Clerks Week, and further extend appreciation to our municipal clerk, Jennifer Kiernan, and to all municipal clerks for their vital services they perform and their exemplary dedication to the communities they represent. In witness whereof, I hereunto set my hand and cause the official seal of the Township of Verona in the County of Essex, State of New Jersey, to be affixed on this 4th day of May, 2026. Congratulations, Jen. Thank you. Shall we get a photograph with our municipal clerk?
Oh, I think we need one.
No, we don't.
Oh, no,
we should
yes, we
do
do.
it.
He's
Oh,
always
yeah.
taking the picture, so now we get our. And we have 2 proclamations for you because Steve made one for you and you made yours. So
I got it from the IIMC.
they're all good. They're all good. All right, Jen, right in the middle.
Who's gonna take it?
Who's taking the photo? Mike, you got it?
I got it.
Jen, right here.
All right,
There you
I was
go.
gonna take the pictures.
Jen's gonna
Try to get out of it.
Here, you can hold one of these.
I'm gonna hold one too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're gonna post that on social media.
Yeah.
Who takes a picture for the
I
clock?
gotta
Takes
send
the
it to
picture.
Lisa.
Oh, it's gonna be a whole thing.
All right. Now, to finish out my report, I'm going to ask everybody to bear with me because the rest of my report will take about 5 times longer than the first part of it. I'm going to read from a statement in order to provide some information on related to pilot funding and school finance and township finance to hopefully answer some common questions that people have brought to the council and explain how the finances work. So hopefully everybody can bear with me as we get into this. I'd like to extend my appreciation to the residents who reached out to the council and me individually with questions related to the finances of the Verona Board of Education and the township. Over the past week and a half, I've had extensive and productive conversations with many residents, including a small group meeting with concerned elementary parents, for which I was joined by Deputy Mayor McAvoy. Thank you, Jack. It is vital for residents to go directly to your elected officials rather than rely on misleading or incomplete information from other sources. This has been a difficult period for families, students, and staff in the Verona schools. Some residents relying on incomplete or incorrect information has only made it more challenging. As an educator and resident, I am concerned with the impact of the proposed programmatic cuts in the school district budget. They directly affect my students and colleagues. While I will not use my elected office to share my specific thoughts on the decisions made in the preparation of school budgets, I've offered my feedback as an educator and resident to the school administration. As a separate government entity from the Board of Education, the Township Council does not set school budget priorities or have the power to restore programs or positions. In light of the budget difficulties, questions have arisen about the nature of school district and township finances. I'd like to clarify that pilot agreements are not the reason why the board was forced to make cuts this year. The gap between revenue and expenses was largely created by unprecedented increase in health benefits costs, an outdated tax levy cap system enacted by the state in the wake of the Great Recession, the state's failure to design and implement an equitable school aid plan, and dramatic inflation since 2020 that's affected not only individuals, but also the public and private sectors. This caused the school district to share with the public cuts needed in order to fund the board and administration's priorities for the 2026 to 2027 school year. The Township of Verona and the Verona Board of Education have enjoyed a collegial, collaborative relationship that has only improved over the last several years through deliberate efforts. During the township's budget development period, school district representatives did not make a specific extraordinary request for funding this year or detail to us specific programmatic changes that they would be making. I learned of the extent of the specific cuts at the same time as the public did last week. There has similarly not been, that should be 2 weeks ago. There has similarly not been a formal request after the budget failed at the last board meeting. These were not errors on the district's part. I believe that the school administration and the majority of the board understand how the district is benefiting from the township's prior land purchases to prevent overdevelopment, for which the debt service on the bonds are repaid with pilot funds, and further recognize the services that the township provides at a significant expense. The school administration did not cite pilot allocations as the reason for its budget decisions. The township and school district have collaborated over many years to provide budget relief for the schools. This has included the ongoing development of a memorandum of agreement between the bodies on shared services. The majority of the services in this agreement are provided by the township to the school district, including all lawn and field maintenance and snow removal. This saves the district hundreds of thousands of dollars in personnel or contractors, disposable equipment costs, and amortized capital investment annually. In addition, the township provides dumpsters, trash collection, trucking, and tipping of garbage to the Board of Education at no cost, which reduces their budget liabilities by another six-figure amount. There are further items provided, including use of fields, school security software, public safety coverage, a Board of Ed events, and more. A conservative estimate of the value of these services is between $425,000 and $734,000 annually as determined by our administration. Additional township-provided services like tax collection, assessment, re-evaluation, and crossing guards represent an annual value to the Board of Ed of approximately $429,000. That is their portion of the total expenses. The township is already providing budget relief to the board. The township gets to use school gyms for basketball and the HBW track and return. During the last BOE meeting, Superintendent Diane G. Giuseppe correctly characterized this agreement as one that benefits the district more than the township. Even if the council has historically provided budget funds to the school district, cuts would still have been necessary in this year's budget due to rising costs. The total amount of pilot funds from the township anticipates its income this year is much less than the district's total budget shortfall, and the board possessing a proportion of the funds would not restore all cut positions. It's impossible to speculate on what the district would prioritize when making their budget decisions in these circumstances. Specials, gift and talented music, and anything else would still be subject to reduction. Difficult decisions would still need to be made. Despite no prior pilot payments to the schools, the funds have been working for the district. Each agreement was effectively tied to financing of a major project. Prior to my service on the Township Council, the governing body acquired 27 acres of land between Brookside Terrace and Commerce Court and on Mount Prospect Avenue from a developer for $12 million. This prevented the construction of 360 residential units, which would have resulted in a significant increase in the student population to the school district. The debt for these purchases is currently being financed through the Open Space Trust Fund, which requires other land purchases, recreation improvements, and field resurfacing that might have been paid through that same fund to be financed with bonds through general capital, which is paid off in part with income from pilot agreements. On behalf of the township, the prior council purchased the property on which the Verona Flats buildings were constructed for about $6 million. The development of the all-affordable housing building was able to meet in part the township's third round affordable housing mandate and dramatically reduce the number of new residential units being built in town by hundreds, as the affordable housing set aside for rental units at that point was only 15%. Several hundred units would have had to be constructed throughout our town if not for this action. While Verona Flats has increased student census in the schools, not constructing it would have resulted in a much higher impact for the schools, potentially requiring not only more staff, but also the costly expansion of facilities. Unfortunately, state-imposed affordable housing obligations and the threat of builders' remedy lawsuits that could result in property owners being able to override zoning laws and build horrific developments have forced the township to take action to prevent overdevelopment. Had these purchases not been made, the staff and infrastructure required to meet student need would have resulted in catastrophic budget issues for the school district. Verona Flats was the only pilot development that resulted in consequential increases in student population. However, this property did not result in new significant building or personnel needs. Most properties from which the township currently receives pilot payments, including the Hilltop White Rock Road Apartments, Verona Place Apartments, Hillwood Terrace Senior Housing, and the Inn and Flag development, have resulted in very limited student census increases due to their housing offerings. The pilot funds were earmarked to pay off a portion of the debt service liability on Verona Flats, as well as the field projects on White Rock Road that were conceived over a decade ago at a cost of between $10 and $20 million between acquisition and construction. Essentially, the pilot money is working for the school district despite the funds not being under control of that entity. The township is still awaiting pilot payments on 1 Sunset Avenue as construction is not started. While I was not a member of the Township Council when they approved the Verona Flats and 1 Sunset pilots, I believe that given the totality of the circumstances, that it was the right approach to use these pilots from these projects to reduce overdevelopment and school census in the township. The governing body at the time, which included Deputy Mayor McAvoy, Councilman Roman, and Councilwoman McGrath, made the difficult but best decisions for Verona. I admit that as a teacher and union leader when this was happening, I originally felt differently before fully understanding the positive impact of these agreements on the schools. Verona continues to successfully employ pilots as an incentive to prevent overdevelopment by reducing unit counts in proposed projects, reducing the number of bedrooms in units, and imposing design standards. The first pilot agreement on which I had the opportunity to vote was for 885 Bloomfield Avenue, commonly referred to as the Valenti Tract. The pilot for this site was part of an agreement mediated by the courts and the Affordable Housing Special Adjudicator between the developer and township representatives, including our manager, Special Affordable Housing Council, and township planner. The property owner's intention was to build 60 rental units at the site. The agreement was then reached that lowered this to 28 for-sale townhouse units, all of which, with the exception of the affordable housing component, are limited to 2 bedrooms. Our experts advised us without this agreement, the developer would have had the right under zoning ordinances to build a significantly greater amount. Without the pilot, the agreement would have been for more units, as the developer would have argued that its margins on home sales would be lower, which is considered by the entities mediating the affordable housing plans. The reduction in unit and bedroom counts helps to reduce the impact on school population. Based on trends from comparable developments like Huntington Park off of Durrell Street, which is made up of 2-bedroom townhouses, the impact will most likely be minimal. This agreement does not affect the school budget for the 2026 to 2027 school year, as neither a pilot nor new improvement taxes would be collected until construction is completed in several years. The owner will continue to pay tax on land assessment and will pay improvement tax for as long as the billboards remain operational on this site. Pilot or not, the district will get the same amount of money from this site in the next budget year in question. It is important to note that regardless of pilots, the board is still entitled to its full share of the land tax annually, which is distinct from the improvement assessment that is replaced with pilots. Further, the board receives 100% of its tax levy every year. The township holds all of the liability for uncollected taxes. Regardless of the existence of pilot agreements, the board is able to revise its levy by the state cap, raise its levy by the state cap. Meaning, even if a property that previously paid taxes on improvements switches to a pilot, the district does not lose any of its ability to levy taxes or maintain its budget. The actual tax base does not affect the dollar amount of their levy, as the cap regulates increases from the prior levy level. It can still raise 2% plus more than the previous year's levy. The burden on the new levy would be split among all taxpayers. This means that if the levy were $100 and the tax cap is 2%, the board could raise its levy to $102 the next year. The school budget does not decrease when there is a pilot. Several of Verona's pilot projects had little or no improvement tax prior to construction. This included the Hilltop development, an untaxed county property, One Sunset, owned by a nonprofit school entity, and in Flag, whose factory was largely vacant and subject to lower occupancy taxes, and Verona Place, which were vacant parking lots. Residents have cited the $1 million plus payment the Township Cedar Grove provides to its board from pilot revenues from the development on the former Overbrook site at the Verona Township line as an exemplar for us. The fundamental difference with the nearly 600 unit Cedar Grove development is that it is approximately half or more 3 and 4 bedroom units with significant impact on schools. Verona has worked deliberately to prevent such developments. While the sharing of the funds can be reassessed annually, providing the school district an allocation to address its budget gap would result in increases in municipal taxes to maintain services and pay debt service, or major cuts that would include public works and public safety. Funds from past pilot agreements are counted as revenue in our budget. There is no separate account. Pilots are not kept in a slush fund. The money cannot be spent twice. If revenue leaves the township budget, the reality is that services must be cut or taxes must be raised. Transferring funds to the board could result in interruption of the services that we already provide to them to lower their operating costs. Any municipal tax increase would be on top of the 6% additional levy that the Verona Board of Education is proposing at the same time as its programmatic cuts. The significant increase would have to happen even if the township were able to provide direct funding to the district. Many of our community members aren't able to afford such increases. Part of Verona will hurt regardless of what entity has direct control over the funds. The county mandated tax revaluation has further increased this burden for many homeowners. The school district is not alone in budget concerns. During the township budget development season, our manager and CFO informed department heads that there would be cuts or no increases, which, considering inflation, means that less can be done. There was pain even before the proposed budget was presented to the council to be considered in our highly transparent review sessions that bring department heads directly before the governing body in open meetings to answer questions while a full budget is available online for public view. A resident asked a great question on whether the township is the rich uncle that could save school programs. This really is not the case. The township lowered an originally proposed 5.88% tax increase closer to 3% this year, and then further by moving health insurance costs to the water and sewer utility to cover workers in that department. However, this can only be done once. In addition, the state reviewed the budget and reversed projected increases in budget lines, including for garbage collection. If we see higher than anticipated costs in these lines, spending freezes and cuts to other services will need to be made mid-year to account for this. Like every other year of my tenure on the council, the governing body unanimously passed the township budget after a series of sessions in our public hearing. This budget included the use of pilot funds as revenue, payment of debt service on anti-development programs, and financial support to the schools in the form of services. The budget has been certified by the county, and the tax rate has been set. The township has reached its appropriations cap, and thus no additional funds can be allocated, even if we wanted to raise taxes to do so. Attempting to change the budget is not an option available to the township. The Township Council and Board of Education held a joint meeting last year on March 25th, 2025, during which most of the time was spent discussing school finance, including pilot agreements. I would encourage you to view the recording of that meeting in its entirety. During this session, the board requested that the township consult them on future allocations of pilot funding, and there was an informal agreement to do so. In furtherance of this, I started the discussions during last Monday's council meeting, last 2 Mondays ago, council meeting, in order to consider an allocation of some of the pilot funds from the 885 Bloomfield Avenue agreement to the district, as these are not tied to a specific project like those in previous years. Despite an incorrect assertion that I did so in the wake of public outcry over pilots, it was actually in furtherance of the discussions in the joint meeting. I brought this up in good faith at a council meeting prior to the nature of the district's cuts being announced. In fact, I first learned of specific layoffs the next day from my colleagues affected, and then received the same press release from the board as did the remainder of the community days later. Since we would not receive payments for several years until site plan review and construction is completed, we have time to thoroughly engage as a council and with the board. This pilot agreement is the first we proposed during my 5 years on the council, and through starting this conversation, I've worked to fulfill the informal agreement with the board. Pilot funds, as part of the township revenue structure, are already both directly and indirectly helping the board. The board and township have always worked together in service of Verona residents. I'm confident that this will continue. I'm a teacher in the Verona schools and would love nothing more than the district having no need for cuts. Unfortunately, reductions are a reality that districts and municipalities across New Jersey are facing. The board and the township finance situations are not optimal. However, the alternative to pilots and the allocations of their revenue are much worse than the status quo. While the schools may enjoy more revenue from traditional taxation, it would be highly unlikely that they would ever be able to make enough from this to offset the population effects of extensive multifamily construction that would require major increases in operating and capital expenditures. The character of our township would additionally change dramatically from overdevelopment. That is not a Verona in which I would want to live. All this being said, I remain committed to continuing our dialogue with the board. Anything that the bodies can do to expand our shared services is on the table. However, there may realistically not be much left to consider. Both entities already participate in money-saving intergovernmental insurance funds and health trusts. We both use cooperative purchasing agreements and state contracts to reduce expenditures. I am open to creative solutions in the best interest of our community. Since learning of the district's budget news, I brainstormed with our attorney and township manager ways to expand shared services with the district and out-of-the-box funding options to see if they're feasible. And that work is not over. During the township manager's report, Mr. O'Sullivan will be addressing current pilot revenues and debt service obligations. The council will begin discussing a new business, how to allocate future pilot funds from 885 Bloomfield Avenue. Prior to this meeting, we listened to legal advice from Joe Bauman, our attorney who specializes in these matters. We will then be able to meet with representatives of the Board of Education to discuss. I look forward to this conversation and plan to discuss offering a proportion of the anticipated revenue from new agreements to the district. But this does not come without a cost. The township continues to face expensive infrastructure challenges that the current council has been forced to address. Allocating more funds to schools means that the tax impact of necessary projects will be higher. This must also be considered in our discussions. Residents have inquired about passing an ordinance that establishes a permanent pilot sharing formula. This is not permitted under state law. Any pilot contributions to the schools are offered on an annual basis, as this council cannot make commitments for future councils. Nor should the board rely on these funds, as a future governing body could choose to vacate any commitments we might make this year. If you have any questions about public finances, please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to schedule a time to discuss in person, on the phone. Email me. I will give you my personal cell phone number. It is the worst kept secret in Verona anyway, right? But please reach out. And that concludes my report. Mr. O'Sullivan.
Thank you, Mayor. I will quickly go through my regular meeting report on a number of the capital projects that we do have ongoing, and then I'll also read a statement regarding the pilots and the shared services with the school. To provide an update to the council on the pool season, we are continuing to hit the financial targets on family memberships, total memberships, non-resident memberships, and sponsorships. However, there is still uncertainty on the total memberships, which can be expected for the rest of the season. As such, the administration is recommending an amendment to the non-resident membership total from 100 to 125 to allow the 11 waitlisted non-resident referrals to join and allow for 14 additional referrals. That's on the agenda later this evening. On a couple of our wastewater projects, we are anticipating the Derwent Avenue sewer trunk line repairs to be awarded at one of the future meetings, subject to the capital budget. The final punch list is underway for the primary clarifier pump station projects. And then our UV disinfection system and microscreen projects are ongoing, and they are going through plan review and permit review by the state at this point. Our Fairview Avenue well rehabilitation project is slightly delayed. There were materials that were delayed for delivery. They are expecting to start the first week of June. They are still expecting to be complete by December 2026 and to place that well back online. Regarding Linden Avenue construction, tree removals and road trench repairs are complete. Concrete work is expected to be complete this week. There have been several responses from residents on Linden Avenue who have requested tree plantings. That will be coordinated in the coming weeks, and then road paving will be scheduled for the first week of July after school is out. Similarly, Dodd Terrace, Afterglow Way, and Summit Road construction is expected to begin June 1st. That will also be a summer paving project. Fairview Avenue and Personette Avenue Signal, it's a county project, but the contractor is expecting to start in the next several weeks. We will provide an update once we have additional information from the county on that project. Regarding Everett Field, since the last meeting, the clay infield has been constructed, additional trees have been planted, playground construction continues, topsoil and final grading was completed, and the big one was that sod was delivered and installed over this past weekend. Construction will continue, but we are approaching the final weeks of construction on that project, and a ribbon cutting ceremony will be coordinated at such time. Regarding our Bloomfield Avenue Streetscape project, that is, we are anticipating a presentation from the design engineer at the next council meeting on May 18th. That will incorporate comments from the different stakeholder groups, committees, the council members, and comments received from the general public. This will be a final concept presentation before they go into final design. And then regarding our facilities upgrades, the roof project is complete. We'll be closing that project out at the next meeting. The windows and repointing punch list should be complete as of today. We'll close that out at an upcoming meeting. And then we've completed our facilities audit with Solutions Architecture. They'll be coming in to present to the council at an upcoming meeting this summer. And then also what everyone probably noticed was the front steps for Town Hall are ongoing currently. Last two items I'll touch on from my report are the community service projects. Our age-friendly audit and action plan is ongoing. The age-friendly leadership team met on April 27th to discuss the needs assessment and action report. That is anticipated for final completion and presentation to the council in May or in early June. And then also moving forward is the Inclusive Healthy Communities grant efforts. A community survey is being ready with anticipation of being presented to the public later this month. And then results will follow the same process. It'll lead to small group discussions and an action plan by the end of the summer, which will then also be presented to the council. Maybe I'll pause if there's any questions from the council on that. Otherwise, I have
Any questions for any of Mr. O'Sullivan's updates? Councilwoman Holland.
In your report, I'm looking at the right page. There's discussion about the asset management plan update and that the draft is currently under review. I don't recall receiving the draft. Was it provided to the council or is it reviewed by your office?
It was reviewed by my office. There was one final adjustment that needed to be made. I provided comments to Boswell over the weekend. So when we do receive that updated version of the asset management plan, it'll be circulated to the council.
Okay, that's great. I look forward to reading that. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments for Mr. O'Sullivan? Mr. O'Sullivan?
And then, Mayor, I will also read a written statement regarding the pilot agreements and the shared services with the Board of Education. I know you've touched on a lot of this, so a lot of this will reiterate and echo things that you've already spoke to, but to that same point, Township Council is aware that the Township of Verona and the Board of Education benefit from a strong relationship that is unique to Verona. The relationship is best exemplified through an extensive shared service agreement that provides value to both parties. The relationship between both organizations has existed for several years and has grown through the years. Some elements within the shared service are tangible, while other elements of the shared service are less so. Nonetheless, administration supports the current framework of the shared service and the ongoing informal arrangement by which the shared service is grown in both organic and deliberate manners. Questions have recently been raised regarding the township's prior pilot agreements. Given their prominence in recent discussions, it's important to clarify how these agreements function and their impact. And again, I know you've spoken to some of this, but this is worth noting. First and foremost, pilot agreements have no impact on the school's budget. The school's budget and their tax levy is subject to an overall 2% cap compared to the prior year's levy, plus exceptions for added costs such as health benefit increases. Pilots do not impact this formula. The township is responsible for collecting and remitting 100% of the school tax levy each year, regardless of whether pilot agreements are in place or not. The pilots do not change the size of the school's budget, but simply change the distribution formula. It is also important to note that the land value for pilot projects is not exempt from taxes. Therefore, the land value is still part of the aforementioned distribution formula. As such, pilot projects will typically pay a portion of their taxes, which are then distributed normally between county, township, and school. The exception to this would be the two fully exempt projects in the township, which are the Hillwood and Verona Flats projects. It should be noted that the Hilltop property was previously entirely untaxed as property owned by the County of Essex. Under the previously approved financial agreement, the property value is now taxed, while only the improvements are exempt. Annual payments collected by the township from pilot projects often coincide with other previous financial decisions or part of other considerations. For example, the Hilltop pilot agreement was implemented at a time the township undertook the development of the Hilltop recreation fields. More recently, the pilot for 885 Bloomfield Avenue was part of a negotiation by which a fourth round affordable housing intervenor was negotiated downward from a much denser development on the same site with a settlement supported by the courts of New Jersey. The reality is that all existing pilot payments have been assumed within the township's annual budgets as one source of its anticipated revenues. All revenues, pilot or otherwise, are part of the municipal budget building process to cover the entirety of the township's expenses, operating budget and debt service included. The pilot revenues are integral to the municipal services provided to all, schools included. The diversion of existing anticipated pilot payments from the municipal budget is not recommended, as it will create a hardship on the township, which can only be reconciled through cuts to staffing and services. Such cuts, which will be discussed shortly, will directly impact the township's ability to fulfill the shared service agreement with the schools, resulting in a whiplash hardship back to the school. This is a result which must be avoided, as it becomes a poor use of fiscal resources and is in poor planning for the collective best interests of both organizations. The shared services agreement between the township and the Board of Education is a source of pride and a model of effective collaboration. it provides substantial value and has expanded over time. Certain services are clearly defined within the agreement, including maintenance of school fields and grounds, snow removal, parking lot maintenance, use of township fields such as Veterans Field, Centennial Field, and Freedom Field, and the collection and disposal of trash, bulk waste, and recycling. In addition, the township provides support in more informal ways, such as supplying traffic control equipment for school events or temporary sharing vehicles and equipment when needed. The township also absorbs several costs that directly benefit the schools but are not explicitly included in the shared service agreement. These include the operations of the tax assessor and tax collector offices, periodic property revaluations, crossing guards, and the reserves for uncollected taxes. The value of these services can be estimated in several ways, based on salary, equipment, and operational costs, or by comparison to contracted services. The defined shared services are conservatively valued between approximately $425,000 and $734,000 annually. Additional township provided services not explicitly listed in the agreement represent an estimated value of an additional approximately $429,000 to the Board of Education. Another way to assess value is to consider the cost for the Board of Education to independently provide these services, establishing a standalone building and grounds department with supervisory staff and operational staff, which would likely cost approximately $1.6 million annually in salaries and benefits, along with a significant capital initial investment for equipment and vehicles, which could range from $400,000 to $500,000. Given these considerations, the township is already well positioned to efficiently deliver these services, and the current shared service model represents the most effective and economical use of taxpayer resources for both the general public and the school community. There's been a recent inquiry into the township's ability to share pilot revenues with the schools. These funds would be a form of bonus funding to the school above and beyond the values already received through the shared service agreement and the full tax levy already collected on the board's behalf. This suggested financial agreement is not feasible. The township's 2026 budget has already been adopted and approved by the state. The 2026 budget has maximized the township's 2% appropriations cap limit. Any additional expenses would effectively push our budget beyond the 2% appropriations cap limit and result in a rejection of the budget by the state. Alternatively, the township would need to find $1.5 million in cuts in the 2026 budget to avoid the budget cap issue. Had this approach been effectuated in January, the township would need staff reductions of approximately 15 individuals, assuming an average salary and benefit package of approximately $100,000 to accomplish the $1.5 million in savings. The staff reductions would need to be doubled to accomplish the same amount of savings given the remaining 2026 calendar. In this hypothetical scenario, the township would need to effectuate approximately 30 staffing reductions. Such reductions would severely harm municipal services to the township that the township provides to all members of the community, including public safety services, infrastructure maintenance, and essential operations, and would effectively eliminate the township's ability to sustain the shared services arrangement. The sharing of pilot funds from existing developments would be detrimental to the services provided by the township and would effectively create health, welfare, and safety concerns due to any such unrealistic cuts. For these reasons, reallocating pilot revenues from existing agreements would be detrimental to the township's financial stability and its ability to provide essential services, raising significant concerns related to public health, safety, and welfare. That said, the township may consider cost-sharing approaches for future pilot agreements where revenues have not yet been incorporated into the budget. However, it is important to note that the recently approved pilot for 885 Bloomfield Avenue will not generate revenue until the project is completed and certificates of occupancy are issued. As the project has not yet received planning board approval or necessary permits, any associated revenues or any potential sharing of that revenue remains speculative and likely several years away. And that concludes my report and statement.
Thank you, Mr. O'Sullivan. Any questions about Mr. O'Sullivan's statements? Councilwoman McGrath.
Thank you. I just want a clarification. So the Spectrum development or One Sunset Avenue, can you give the public an update? I mean, that project has not moved forward in several years, but when it is completed, we'll have a pilot payment. Can you just give an update on where that project is and when it may be completed, to the best of your knowledge?
To my knowledge, the development of that project is prefaced on the school vacating from the building, which will not occur until the completion of this school year. So the demolition of that building would not occur until this summer at the earliest. As a result, then construction of any new development on that site would not likely begin until later this fall, and is at least 12 months probably worth of construction. So you're probably not seeing construction completion until sometime towards the end of next year or even the following year. So by the time they are being issued certificates of occupancy, that will likely fall in the 2027 or 2028 calendar year.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Anybody else? Okay, on to the Deputy Manager's report, Mr. Kraus.
For Town Hall, we still have the vendor cleaning the police department. In a meeting with the PBA today, they discussed some additional items they would like the vendor to address. We'll be reaching out to them to do a walkthrough of the building in the coming weeks. The Verona Community Center, DPW has advised the bike lane and EV charging is expected to be striped in 2 weeks, or within 2 weeks. There was a delay on the mold remediation as the vendor was unable to obtain a NJBRC, which is necessary for purchasing. They emailed today that they should have it within 2 days. We will be posting for a position at the wastewater treatment plant for a sewage plant operator. We hope to have that up within 2 weeks. Today, administration met with both unions, Fairview Insurance, our insurance broker, and Harmony RX, who is a PBM, on potentially switching prescription benefit managers effective July 1st. The reason for this change is increased data that the township would receive, as we don't currently receive any data from Benecard on utilization ratios or top drugs that are used by our population, which limits our ability to put wellness programs into place and reduce the plan spend. We have supervisor harassment training is scheduled for this Friday. Regular staff will follow. The learning management system, we are still going back and forth with the NGIF on getting it set up, especially as we get closer to the pool and summer playground kicking off. At the pool, we are going to be we have partnered with a vendor, Rescue Ready. They will be putting on a few classes at the pool, open to both the general public and pool staff. The new pool management is also exploring scuba classes at the pool. Unfortunately, we were not awarded grant funding to replace some vehicles for senior transportation. We have submitted a reimbursement request for the recent EV purchase for the medical transport vehicle. We're eligible to receive $4,000 for that and $5,000 for the new charger that was installed, which is behind the building, a few spots away from the gym doors. The Shade Tree Commission submitted the Community Forestry Management Plan directly to the state. They are going to review that on May 6th. Then on to pool numbers. Director Prisco sent an update earlier today. Since May 2nd, we have picked up an additional 12 family members or family memberships. We are up to 1,162 total memberships, and the Community Services Department and Administration have successfully hit the $50,000 fundraising goal set by the Recreation Advisory Committee. As of Friday, the amount received was $50,025. There was also a sponsorship from a jeweler to sponsor the Nerds concert. And the tickets that went on sale today, approximately 700 were sold.
Thank you, Mr. Kraus. Everybody's excited for the Nerds coming to the pool. Any questions for Mr. Kraus? Deputy Mayor?
Mr. Kraus, you said we're looking to change our prescription vendor. I know a couple months ago we got the memo that our prescription rates were going up 26%. Does that lower rates at all?
The Benecard renewal was 30%. The renewal or the proposal from Harmony RX was 26%. It might have been 26.1, 26.2. They are coming into it slightly blind as they did not get any data from Benecard prior. They were just going off of the renewal provided by Benecard.
Any other questions for Mr. Kraus? All right, hearing none, we'll move into council member reports. Deputy Mayor McAvoy, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Continuing with the end of the deputy manager's report, I would like to thank the pool staff, buildings and grounds, and the pool parks and rec committee for all the work they put into the finances and trying to push this season along and get it into the positive number. And they're doing a heck of a job, and we're looking really good. So I thank them for their work on that. It's been a lot of work, a lot of time, and a lot of analysis. As the mayor mentioned, I sat in for the Eagle Scouts medal giveaway, the Eagle Scout Court of Honor last week. I'd like to congratulate the 5 Eagle Scouts for their achievement. It's a great achievement. I'll leave their names to the proclamations when the mayor does it in a couple weeks. I was happy to step in, but the mayor took a personal day, I guess. I thank you for that. And I did some research and found out, and I want to congratulate you for receiving the New Jersey Daughters of the American Revolution, this year's Outstanding Teacher of American History. So congratulations, Dr. Mayor Tamboro. And going through, moving forward, I actually sat and read emails, and I'd like to thank all the residents for their emails about the school budget and the cuts. I made a list of about 7, 8, 9 things, and I checked everyone off. Mayor, your statement was very thorough. I want to add just a tiny bit of history on it. I came to the council in 2017, and the meeting prior to me getting sworn in as a council-elect, I was actually called into a closed session just to discuss the affordable housing predicament or concept that we were being drawn into, because the decision, the court decision, was made a couple months prior. In the coming years, I believe it was 2018, we had 4 interveners, and it was touching 5 properties. We actually had a 6th property, which we just did 2 weeks ago, 885. They weren't actually an intervener at the time, I don't believe. But of those, all those properties collectively, when we started the process, there was a total of 870 units they wanted to put in Verona. Because of our negotiations, our land purchases, we got that number down to 295. And 200 of those units haven't been built, but will be, as we just talked about, One Sunset. So there were a lot of decisions made, a lot of time spent, a lot of money spent, $18 million just in land purchases. Didn't include all of our professionals, which had to be over $1 million, I would say. I don't have that exact number, but if anybody wants to reach out and discuss all those properties, I can name every one and give you the numbers on them. I'd be more than happy to do that, but we've heard a good bit already on it. I will say the only other one that came back was 885 that started out at that time at 60 units, and we are now approving them for 28 units. So overall, it was 323 units when other towns were putting in a heck of a lot more. I want to just touch on one last thing. Councilwoman McGrath just brought up the Spectrum pilot. During discussions at the time when we were negotiating the finances of it, we actually know exactly what that number was at the time. I believe it was 2019 or 2020. And that money was actually earmarked to pay for the land purchase and the building at Verona Flats for the 95 units. So that's where we balanced it out. So for the pilots that we approved, we had earmarked that money for other projects in town. That pretty much touches on everything that wasn't discussed. But again, I'd like to thank all the residents. And again, just like the mayor said, if you have any questions or want to talk, I've been more than happy to reach out. You can Google my name. You'll have my cell number. And that's all.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councilman Roman.
Thank you very much. I'll also touch on this topic. Thank you to all the residents who have reached out and sent us inquiries about this. We know that this is a very important topic to everybody. I've been around 2 years longer than the deputy mayor. I joined the council in 2015. At that time, our largest pilots had already been put into place. The Hilltop pilot, the second phase of that building, I believe it just finished being built out. That money was immediately committed by prior councils to pay for all of the field development up there. Hillwood Senior Living was also already on the books, and Spectrum 360 was paying a small pilot right now that's $18,505. I looked at our total list of pilot revenue, and in last year we brought in $1,695,674 in pilot revenue. That goes into the municipal general fund in all of our revenue. So basically, when we develop our budget, all of our non-taxable revenues, in other words, the pilots, various fees and charges, grants, et cetera, go into the top line of our revenue in our budget. We figure out our expenses. The difference results in the tax levy that's charged out to taxpayers as property taxes. But what happens with pilot revenues when it comes in, historically, a lot of the time there has been a large capital expense tied with it. The Hilltop Fields are an excellent example of this. What we talked about with the Spectrum 360 project and building out Verona Flats is another example of pilot revenue being tied into a very expensive purchase. I can tell you from sitting here through all the discussions on development in this community, and we spend a lot of very late nights here in closed session, basically talking through the mechanics of development. What this council continuously focuses on is how are we able to avoid impact on the schools? That is a primary topic of our discussions. Anytime a developer comes to town wanting to develop something, we look and see how much we can shrink the project down. How many fewer units can we actually build out? How many fewer bedrooms can we make happen there? The pilots are very frequently a tool for these negotiations with developers. They rely on the pilots in terms of developing their financing for the buildings and making it so that the numbers pencil out on their side of the table. And the pilots are not always, but frequently they tend to backload a lot of the revenue so that it lets the developers basically build out the buildings, pay for their construction costs, get leased up, and then eventually the revenue starts to increase year over year. I remember before I got onto the council in like 2011 to 2013, it was being said that the Hilltop was developing $1 million in revenue for the township. It wasn't. It was developing about $500,000 in revenue. Only now in 2026 do we see $950,000 in revenue coming from the Hilltop, just to show you sort of how backloaded a lot of the pilots are. It depends on how you structure them. But I can tell you that we are consistently trying to minimize the impact on the schools through our management of development. It's our number one discussion point. Through all the land purchases we did, eliminating the number of residencies that would have been built here, 360 on the 2 parcels alone that we bought and preserved as open space. Just imagine the impact on the school system. Again, you look at the project in Cedar Grove, all those townhomes that are 3 and 4 bedroom townhomes, compared to what we do in Verona, where typically the unit mix is heavily weighted towards 1 and 2 bedroom units with some 2 bedroom units, and the 3 bedroom units typically are there as a result of state affordable housing regulations that actually mandate a certain number of bedroom counts in that category. So that's our efforts on a large scale, really to minimize the impact on the schools. If we simply didn't do this and we just negotiated these as ad valorem developments and did not really push as hard as we did, I feel like the impact on the schools would be greater than it actually is. I feel like then you would actually start seeing a lot of school children entering the schools from these developments. And that's really what our biggest fear is the day that the school board has to go to expand a school. That's really what we're trying to avoid here, is the very large capital investment it would take if they ever had to significantly expand any of their buildings, let alone if they had to hire up and start providing services for a lot of other students. We have this very collaborative relationship with the school board. We do what we do very well, which is we maintain facilities and property. We handle a lot of services for them. As we said, we don't charge them for garbage removal, for snow removal, for when we send police officers to school events, et cetera. All of these things are part of the collaborative relationship because we realize that one tax base is essentially paying all of the taxes for both of these entities. It's the same, the school boundaries are coterminous to the town's boundaries. So we put forward the services that we're very good at. And we let them concentrate on educating children. We do what we can do in terms of managing development in Verona to minimize their long-term burden. As I talked about with where the revenues go, I know what everyone's really looking for is for us to come up with an allocation right now. I know that the schools are in the middle of a budget crunch, and you would love for us to basically be able to fill that gap. The issue is that if we were to do something like that, it would be a commensurate cut in municipal services. We cannot take money out of our budget and write a check to the schools without a corresponding reduction in our own services, which means basically personnel cuts, or a tax rate increase, which we can't do right now because we've already set the tax rate because we've passed our budget. We are open as a council to looking at pilots that are going forward. I think you've heard that from a number of people a number of times, but it's very hard for us to change the past. As I said, the vast majority of our pilot revenue, basically $1.1 million, was brought in pre-2015 when I joined the council. So we really do have to look going forward. So people that are looking for us to be able to fill this gap right now, it's very, very challenging. If anyone, knows for a way for us to come up with $1.5 million to take out of our budget, I would love to hear it. We racked our brains during the budget meetings and hearings to try and reduce our budget as much as possible because we felt like the tax increase that was proposed was going to be a pretty substantial burden on the Verona taxpayers. And what we recognize is a very tough year for a lot of people. People are hurting. They do not have additional cash. Inflation is still rampant. And we did everything we could to reduce our budget to bring down our increase to our own tax levy just to give people a little bit of tax relief where we could. It's been a difficult year for us in terms of inflation. You just heard that our Benecard costs, which is our prescription drug coverage for our employees, went up 30%. We have to handle these cost increases as well. We pay more for fuel. We pay more for building materials. We pay more for contracting services. It really hits us as well. And we do a lot to keep our budget down in order to keep the overall tax burden in this community as manageable as we possibly can. I sympathize. I mean, the school board has basically delivered some very tough news to people, and all the programs that they are proposing reductions to. I recognize that everyone is very dependent on them and that those enrich everyone's children's lives a lot. Every parent who is sitting here or is on Zoom tonight is here for a reason because they're concerned about what services are being offered to their children and the fact that some of these may be pulled out from under them. And I really do sympathize. It's a very difficult decision. I'm just having a very hard time finding a way that we can act right now this year. We are continuing the discussion a lot. Like I said, we do recognize that this is a single community, that the schools are not us and them. They take on a specific set of governmental duties. We take on a different set of governmental duties, but we are not looking to play keep away from them. And as we've talked about, we use pilot funds, we use development management for a long-term plan of making sure that they are not impacted and they are able to provide the excellent education and all the services that we do. So we'll keep the discussion going. I look forward. I know that a lot of people are going to want to speak to us tonight, so I'm going to wrap it up there and let us move along, and hopefully you all be able to tell us what's on your mind tonight. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Councilman Roman. Councilwoman McGrath.
Thank you, Mayor. Obviously, a lot was already said tonight, and I agreed with the majority of what my colleagues have presented. I'm not going to, go through line by line on a few nuances here and there where maybe I'm not in agreement. I think the area where we're most divided on this council is in the area of development and the idea of using development strategically for revenue generation. As it's already been reported, I think at the Board of Ed meeting, I did not vote in favor of this last pilot, not because of the issues with whether or not we were going to share it with the school district, but because I don't really want to see development on this tract of land, and I don't think the pilot was actually appropriate. And that was my prerogative to, not vote in favor of it. I also just want to clarify that, again, people were talking about their histories on the council. I was elected 7 years ago, and the day after I won the election, but before I was sworn in, the council had a meeting that went till midnight where the deal with the developer for the Spectrum project or Sunset, One Sunset, was struck where a pilot was going to be part of that. So even though, I was part of some of the decisions, and they were necessary decisions to purchase land to prevent development, to consolidate properties so that we could build Verona flats, so that we didn't have to overpopulate, the number of units in town, and to finalize the financial agreement with One Spectrum. I was even locked into some of those decisions, based on when I joined. And that's how long development takes. I have, as part of my reelection campaign and throughout the years, said that we really need to get more creative and have a more revenue generating mindset. We tend to only do these developments because the state of New Jersey forces us to. Deadlines, by the way, that were long predicted and known. And so that's part of my frustration in general, is hiring the right professionals to understand how can we get more money into the system so that things are just not so tight, so that we're not squabbling over these pilot dollars that we're talking about. Now, I've spoken to many parents over the last few days. I want to thank everyone who's emailed us. You did not get an email response from me. You will in the upcoming days. Many of you know my story. I'm a mother, a parent of two boys, one of whom is now in college, the other who is a freshman in the high school. Both were very involved in the music department. And in fact, my freshman is incredibly involved in the music department. And I'm staring at many friends and familiar faces because I am a volunteer for the Verona Music Parents Association. Music is an important part of our community. It is the crown jewel program of our school system. And I was really gutted and devastated when I heard we were losing two incredible teachers, both of which my children have benefited from. And that's after losing another incredible teacher just 2 or 3 years ago, which was incredibly emotional to lose him. These are the future teachers of our music department, and the fact that they're being cut is really, really difficult. I really want the Board of Ed to come to the table, and I want us to really work with them to see what can be done. We talk about the transparency of our project, of our process. And I brought our budget binder a year ago when we met with the Board of Ed, and I'm going to bring the physical representation of what we provide to the public. And this year we ensured that this was posted publicly so that you could examine line by line how we're spending our money. And offline, as part of other conversations, are there 1 or 2 places where we could get a little tighter? Yes, but not enough to, generate the funds that people are requesting us that would make a meaningful difference. I think that the public really, what I've been hearing from all of you is that you want transparency, you want us all to come to the table, but that also requires information on both sides. And I think we're all looking to understand better how we can help the Board of Ed, not just this year, but next year, which is predicted to be even worse. I've been very attuned to what's going on around Essex County, and I've been reading a lot of news articles. Obviously, you all know this, everyone I'm looking at and everyone on Zoom. This is facing almost every school district, some more severe than others, that we are laying off teachers and valuable staff because of basically an archaic and not relevant anymore 2% cap, because of a health insurance system that is clearly broken and in crisis, and due to a high inflationary environment. And so I've applauded all of the residents who are advocating, who are here tonight, who have emailed us, who went and spoke. I heard many great things about the youth and how they advocated to save their programs, and I applaud them. And what I've said to many of you, and what I will continue to say, is this is just the beginning of a long road for all of us, to advocate to restore tax dollars to fund our incredible school systems. That is a fight for Verona specifically, with the cuts to these particular staff members, and trying to get that money restored in future years. But also, just on a global basis, we need our legislators to come in with solutions, whether it's the school benefit formula, the 2% cap, or again, this broken health care insurance environment. So what I want to add to what all of my colleagues have said is I do encourage you, first of all, to not stop coming here, not stop emailing us and going to Board of Ed meetings and getting involved, but to now take it to the next level, which is our elected assembly members and state Senate members and the leadership of the legislature and the governor's office. I think phone calls to all of them, which only take a few minutes, are worthwhile to say, I'm a taxpayer and my school budget is being devastated because of systematic things that you put in place. You need to, come to the table and figure out these things, so that we can try to make steps to restore and prevent devastation of our public school system, not just here and in Verona. And I just want to end with saying, listen, we've gone to the League of Municipalities many times, and echoing what has already been said, we have attempted to kind of share revenue with the district by having a very generous shared service agreement and continuing to expand that. Other districts have purchased things, so you may be aware that the school district can't just bond for things like we can. We were supposed to have on our agenda tonight, but it may be postponed to the next meeting, our bonding for all of our projects for the year. The school doesn't have that flexibility. They have to go to referendum, which is costly and time consuming. And so in other districts, they have bought things. They have put in fields. They have bought school buses. And so that's another mechanism we can look at in the future. And then, of course, the third is a cash payment. So it's really what I look forward to in the upcoming weeks and months is really balancing, like, what are the mechanisms that would really most help the Board of Ed? Do we ratchet something up? Do we think creatively on a purchase piece? So, I think there are options, but there's no solution this evening, just a lot of information. I do want to thank our township manager, since our, and the superintendent, since our meeting a year ago, they have been meeting collaboratively and talking about these issues, but again, not to the point where we understood that they were going to be facing such cuts and that they actually made a request. But they have been in constant communication, our town manager and superintendent, and that's one level of collaboration, but board to board should grow and continue, and we certainly want it to. In addition to that rambling statement, two things. I attended Holy Spirit's commemoration of 10 years of the food pantry. They started 10 years ago with 16 families. Last year, they grew to 1,789 families. The dinner on Friday night was lovely. And they didn't want to call it a celebration because the fact that so many people are food insecure is not a celebration, but it was a marking of all of the volunteerism that the community is putting in towards the effort. And it was a great community event, and I really enjoyed going. And today I did something a little different. I attended the state committee for LGBTQIA plus youth equity and inclusion in schools. I've never attended a state committee meeting, but it happened to be held in Essex County. And so I attended, and it was a very interesting group of very dedicated volunteers that come from all different sort of state areas, and including parents. And it was an interesting discussion on how to protect our children and keep them safe. And that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman McGrath. Councilwoman Holland.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. So first of all, I want to thank all of the residents, the parents here in the audience this evening. I really appreciate it. I appreciate you for coming to our meeting. I appreciate the 43 attendees who are currently on Zoom waiting for their chance to talk. And I do mean this very sincerely. Thank you for coming out. Thank you for the emails. We did receive a number of emails. I've been trying to keep up with replies to them, even during the workday, which was not necessarily the easiest thing to do today. But I do think it's important to be responsive to residents. And I do really appreciate your engagement. Thank you for engaging at the April 28th Board of Ed meeting. And thank you in advance of tomorrow night's Board of Ed meeting, because I expect many of you will be there as well. It's really important to have engaged citizens in this process, and more often than not, our meetings are not well attended. And that is also true for the Board of Ed. As was already stated, my council colleagues and I went through our detailed and transparent budgeting process, submitted our materials to the state before learning that the superintendent and the Board of Ed were proposing cuts to the music program and other programs. So in the interest of full disclosure, I have 2 children in the Verona Public Schools, both of whom participate very actively in the music program, one of whom is an HBW 6th grader directly impacted by the proposed staffing changes. My husband and I volunteer for the program as well. He's much more actively engaged in that, so some of you may know him very well. But we are engaged in this process because our children really love this program. And so I really want to reiterate the fact that I learned of these proposed staffing changes at the same time that you did, because I'm a parent and because the Board of Education's budgeting process does not have the same level of transparency as the council's process. I have so much sympathy for your children and so much heartache for my own daughters who love their music teachers. This is a very difficult situation, and I just really want you to know that my heart is with you and my heart breaks for my daughter who's very upset. But we are the council, and we do not have control over the BOE's staffing decisions or the superintendent's staffing decisions. That is a separate body. So I do understand, however, that the desire is for a one Verona approach. And so one of the things that I think is really worthwhile is that you heard this evening that the township does provide a variety of services to the Board of Ed. That is not necessarily done in other towns. And I think at least one of my colleagues, Councilwoman McGrath, just referenced that, right? These shared services represent hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of value that the town provides to the schools. That's not often acknowledged, but I do appreciate the township manager's thorough written review of the shared services, as well as the superintendent did acknowledge at the April 28th meeting that we do provide these services and that they are very valuable. They're just not often acknowledged in the larger discussion. But I also want to acknowledge the fact that just because we do a good job, and I think we do a good job of providing shared services to the Board of Ed, doesn't mean that we're done, doesn't mean that we couldn't do more, doesn't mean that we can't have a dialogue about it. And so I think the honest answer to all of that is we should continue to have a dialogue about this. There may be further opportunities. And I think that's a great outcome of this, is that we could have more transparency and more dialogue about what could be done to have a more collaborative approach between the Board of Ed and the council. But those are not solutions that are going to be reached tonight. These are discussions that are commencing tonight, and there's a meeting tomorrow night. This is not going to be resolved in 24 hours. These are solutions ultimately for a later year, and I appreciate that that may be disappointing, but it is an honest answer. And I do think it's important to approach this with candor. And I also want to stress that transparency and that continuous dialogue is incredibly important to this process. Yes, in the 5 years I've been on the council, I never voted for a pilot. I share many of Councilwoman McGrath's concerns about our strategy around development in this community. I will also say, in the nearly 5 years that I've been on this council, we've only had the one joint meeting with the Board of Ed. And I think coming out of that joint meeting, there are a lot of opportunities for better collaboration between the Board of Ed and the council. How many of us this evening have just said, we only heard about this when you did, right? And we only heard about it. Some of us only heard about it because we're parents and because we're in these groups, and that's how we were hearing about it. So I think that's challenging, because having heard about it at that time, that was after our budget process concluded and only days before the BOE's planned vote. So as a parent, as an elected official, I think that needs to change. I think there's lots of opportunities for improvement, and I'm willing to be part of that process. But I also want to, again, thank you for your engagement in this process, and thank you for your emails, and thank you for attending, and in advance for attending tomorrow night, because you're doing the right thing, because your engagement is what will lead to this being a much more open and collaborative process. So I want to encourage you to continue to do that. So thank you again. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Councilwoman. This time, we will open for public comment on any matter anybody wishes to bring before the council. Madam Clerk, would you please read the public participation statement?
Anyone from the public wishing to speak on any matter, if you're attending by Zoom, please raise your hand by pressing the raise hand button on your monitor. If you're dialing in by phone, press *9. If you're attending in person, please raise your hand and be acknowledged before approaching the lectern. Once recognized, clearly state only your name and township of residence for the record. You are not required to provide your street address. However, if you do, please note that these meetings will be posted on the township's YouTube channel, and addresses will not be redacted for any purpose. You'll have 4 minutes to address the council, and there'll be no cross dialogue during this public portion. After everyone wishing to speak has been heard, the council may address your comments and or questions.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Mr. Walsh.
Good evening. My name is Brendan Walsh. I live here in Verona. Lived here for almost 20 years. I've got 3 daughters. The oldest graduated from Verona High School last year, and I have a daughter who's a sophomore at Verona High School and a daughter who's a 7th grader at HBW. I'm here tonight not for immediate solutions. I want to make that clear. I'm not expecting the township to write a check right now. I understand that anything that happens is probably a year away. But I'm here to share my concerns about the substantial financial crisis that our schools are facing. And I believe that the town and the council have the means and the responsibility to be part of the solution. As some of the council alluded to tonight, parents are furious, and we're being told that if we're mad this year, just wait until next year. And so that's why I'm here to plead that you begin that process now. I know you had a meeting last year. It doesn't really sound like anything substantial happened, and there's blame on all sides to go around for that. But I'm urging you to start resuming those conversations now. I want to be fair. I understand that pilot agreements can serve legitimate purposes, and I'm a litigator by day. I'm not here to relitigate any of those issues. I recognize that the town and the Board of Education, that the town shares a lot of meaningful services, including grounds maintenance, facilities use, and many other shared services. But shared services, in my view, are just good government. They're not a replacement for the money that our schools need. For example, it wouldn't make sense for both the town and the school district to have snowplows. So I understand that the town is doing that, but that would be a complete waste of money. And so I'm very glad to hear that we're not doing that. And I think that there are probably more things. I don't have any, silver bullets or anything magic that I can share right now. But I think that there needs to be more discussion around more shared services, more creative shared services, whether it's in the form of even staff. But I want to be very clear that I do believe that going forward, there needs to be actual revenue sharing, not just with 885 Bloomfield, which is going to start, in a few years, but with existing pilot monies. I have one very specific question that I'm hoping I can get an answer to tonight from either the council or the town attorney. I've heard in both emails and in some the remarks tonight that prior pilot funds were earmarked. I want to just confirm my understanding is accurate, that an earmark is not a formal legal pledge, meaning that those funds are not legally obligated to be spent on any specific funds. My understanding is that they come into the general revenue. I think Councilman Roman said that they come into the general revenue and they can be spent like any other funds. My understanding is also that that debt service is outside of the 2% levy cap. So I have lots of complaints about how high my taxes are, but and I'm not necessarily asking for a tax increase, but one thing I hate more than paying high taxes is paying high taxes and then having my children's school education cut. So I just, I'm here to ask for a very, collaborative engagement with the school board. My time is up. I have more to say, but I'll let others talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Yeah, it's just to reiterate the rules. We don't answer anybody directly until all public comment is over. So hang in there. We will get to you because I have some great answers for your questions, Mr. Walsh. And thank you for coming.
Hi, thank you, Mayor. And once my
Just-
name is
just-
Rachel.
There you go. Thank you.
Rachel Carmel. I live in Verona. And thank you very much, Mayor and Deputy Mayor, for meeting with us to talk about our concerns to the cuts to elementary education. I moved to Verona 12 years ago, specifically because I liked the feeling of stepping back in time almost to a quaint town. I was standing on my street and there was children playing outside and riding bikes. And I knew that that's what I wanted. I want that sense of security for my children and a good education. So I'm not talking about cutting police force or town services to fuel education, but how we can work collaboratively so that people who are coming to the town, so that their kids can play tag in the street and get the education they need to be a functioning member of society and what we want from our kids. I know that the township manager said that he's meeting regularly since the March meeting with the superintendent, but it was still unclear that there was going to be these budget cuts. In the Board of Ed meeting on the 28th, we were told that they knew since last fall that they were going to have a significant deficit. The exact number of the 3.2 before they made the cuts was not known, but that they knew it was going to be significant. So I would urge that, I think Councilwoman Holland said a one Verona approach. That is what I think everyone here tonight really wants. If we had a one Verona approach, ideally that number or just that the significance of that number would have been known sooner by all involved so that there could have been something possibly for this year. But where we are today, I don't think that anyone is asking for this year. We are all asking to look down the road and not just to the 885 Bloomfield property, but we're talking about, I think I only just realized in this meeting that One Sunset is 200 units. I do live in the Brookdale section. So to me, the idea that that there's that many units going in that area. And then just in general, in any of these areas, it seems that because we have the capacity, Brookdale does get kind of the most of the overflow from those. So if we can please have a conversation about pilot funds and have it not be limited to that, anything that we're able to do to have a One Verona approach, because people who have lived in town are going to, there's going to be an exodus if we are paying these taxes and having to send our kids to private school, or it's not going to be attracting. Our home prices have gone up, and it's going to stop having that appeal. And I'm really hoping, for the sake of my first grader and I have twins that are 4, that we can kind of stop the trend that seems to be happening this year and kind of save that step back in time that we have in Verona.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Hi, Dana Bachin, 52 Derwent Avenue. I wanted to say I agree with everything that everybody else is saying. This is not about like tomorrow fix the budget. This is moving forward and looking at how, as much as you say pilots are not affecting our district, I actually think they're even affecting the town income. Like I don't know that I understand them. There's a lot of different components here, and you guys are giving us a lot of different numbers, and I'm trying to, like, as a just normal person, trying to understand how this even works. From the beginning of when this started, I had assumed, and I had heard the information that I got, and that was that pilots are used as a means to kind of, like you said, negotiate down affordable units. And at the time, we were dealing with that major affordable housing unit thing, and we didn't have enough units. So that all made sense. I didn't realize that it took from the schools, but that all made sense as to why you would use them. Looking forward at all of these projects that are kind of up and coming, it seems like most of them are already earmarked with, well, this is allowed to go here and this is how many units are allowed to be here, like under the restoration laws or something, whatever, restorative, I forget what it's called. But so it seems like you guys already have control of what can be built now on a lot of the properties in this town. So if that is the case, and we're already kind of overcrowded and the schools are struggling and the schools are now having to pay for students, that the cost, I think the cost of each student is almost like $19,000 per kid now in the district. There's about 44 of those if you count just Annan and Verona Flats. 44 students that are $19,000 per student that the school now has to pay for. Like you said, shared services, that's great. But eventually, like the cost of plowing a parking lot and throwing out garbage, those remain the same. They're not going to change much. But if we keep on giving the district students that aren't paid for, eventually the benefit is going to outweigh, or the cost is going to outweigh the benefit for the schools. I think it already has, actually. So my question is, why, if we have a say over what can go, how many units can go on properties from this point forward, why would we use a pilot at all? Why wouldn't we just have these people pay real taxes like the rest of us? Wouldn't that generate more income for the town and generate more income for the schools? I don't see the point of them. So I hope that you can clear that up tonight.
Good evening, Council. My name is Jed Dinnerstein. I'm a Verona resident. Also want to begin with a couple thank yous to the mayor and the deputy mayor for speaking with us this weekend. Also to Congresswoman Holland for speaking with me as well yesterday. I'm going to echo a lot of the things that have been said already, specifically that I'm not here for this year's budget, but that I am here for next year's and the years beyond. I think Congresswoman McGrath, your discussions around opportunities for creative solutions. Yeah. I think really what we want, and Councilman Roman, your comment about One Verona and Councilwoman Holland as well, I think really what we want is to see that active collaboration between the council and the board and the district. My sense that there, given there's been one meeting, last year, none, as I understand it, for 7 years before that, and none since, that, the extent of the closeness feels a bit overstated. And it feels that in practice, the two bodies operate in a relatively siloed way and not in a one Verona way that I think would really have the most benefit for the town. So I think really the specific ask that I come with tonight is a commitment from the council that should the Board of Ed and superintendent be open to it, that the collective bodies would commit to meeting, no reason for me to be prescriptive, but call it at least twice a year or quarterly, whatever was most logical to achieve that ultimate goal of careful year-over-year calibration within the One Verona context, be it pilots, be it shared services. I think all of us here are ultimately method agnostic. What we want is the result, that the benefit of the bargain that brought all of us here. And that's something that I think, because it's so nuanced, and give true credit to all of the things that the township does already, but it's so nuanced and so complicated that it needs to be looked at on a year-over-year basis, facts and circumstances at the time. And the last thing I would add to that is that it be done in a public forum as well. Like, I appreciate that the township manager speaks with the superintendent. I think even better would be the council speaking with the Board of Ed in, and again, maybe some of those meetings are public forums, some are behind closed doors, for whatever the pros and cons of each are. But I think clearly even the council and certainly the public had no visibility into the deficit that the board was facing. And I would really hope that in future years, that committed, active, and public collaboration could ensure that this doesn't happen again. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Chad.
Good evening. My name's Michelle Gruet. I live in Verona. This town council recently approved a long-term tax exemption for the developer of 885 Bloomfield Avenue, known as the Valenti Tract. Days later, Verona Public Schools announced a $3.2 million budget shortfall that threatens arts, music, world languages, and staff across every school in our district. I fully understand that the Board of Ed budget shortfall is for a number of reasons, including huge increases in health benefit costs, transportation costs, etc. But this new pilot certainly doesn't help. Just recently, you voted 3-2 to approve a 30-year pilot for the Valenti Tract, 24 market rate townhouses, and 4 affordable housing units. Before this agreement, Verona's master plan zoned this tiny strip of wooded land for 14 townhomes. So now we stand with twice as many units. The developer also received additional concessions, including approval to have the town's lot coverage limit go from 55% to 80%. So the 4 buildings on this 1.77 acre lot will now cover much more land than our town ordinance allows. Okay. Based on current construction costs for market rate townhouses in suburban Essex County, this project carries an estimated total construction cost of somewhere between $16 million and $17 million. At a conservative average market value of $650,000 per unit, these 28 townhouses would carry a total assessed value of roughly $18 million. At Verona's current property tax rate of 3.06%, that would generate approximately $550,000 per year in conventional property taxes, the kind that everyone here pays that owns a home in Verona. Of that $550,000, roughly 50 cents of every dollar, about $275,000 per year, would go directly to Verona's public schools. But the Valenti Tract was given a pilot. Over the 30-year life of the Valenti Tract pilot, that tax abatement represents more than $8 million in school funding that our children will never see. More than $8 million just from this one property. I have 3 questions. First, did the township retain an independent financial professional to evaluate whether a pilot was truly warranted on this parcel? Second, what is the anticipated annual service charge, the actual dollar amount that the Valenti Tract developer will make to the township each year? And how does that figure compare to the roughly $550,000 this property would have generated annually in conventional property taxes? And third, will this council commit to a moratorium on future pilot agreements until a formal review of their impact on school funding is completed? Thank you for your accountability, transparency, and willingness to ask hard questions before signing agreements that last 30 years. Thank you.
Okay. Seeing no further public comment, I close public comment at this time. I will respond to some of these things, and hopefully the matters will pop in. First of all, thank you everybody for sharing your thoughts. As I said, I did have the option or the opportunity to hear a lot of public comment from individuals over the last couple of weeks, including spending hours on the telephone with several people at in-person meetings. So for Mr. Walsh first, I appreciate you, number one, bearing with me for an hour on the phone, Brendan, as I talk to your ear off a little bit. But I do appreciate your concern. When you talk about shared services, this is an interesting piece. Typically, a shared service suggests that there is one governmental entity that provides service, another governmental entity tends to pay for it. That's typically what we do. So we have a shared court. We have a shared service agreement with Roseland. So right now we pay North Caldwell for the court that they host. It saves everybody money. Roseland pays us for their building construction code official status. What is actually the shared services that are happening between the Board of Ed and the township are not really that same structure, right? So I just want to clarify that when we have shared services out, and I agree that shared services are good government, one of the first things I did when I got elected to the council was work to have a shared court, because our court was costing us a lot of money. But I do want to put it out there, there's a nuance in what a shared service is or not, but I agree that it is good government. A lot of that over the years, interestingly enough, was simply developed because there were needs and the township was able to come in and meet those needs. And I think that's something that's going to continue. One of the issues that, and I've made a point not to comment on specific cuts, so I'm not criticizing a particular cut for the board because I don't think that's the township's position. But with 3 maintenance staff members being cut from the budget, and there'll be a lot of reliance on contractors, if a contractor is not available and there's an immediate repair need, I'm sure the township would potentially be stepping in to assist between buildings and grounds and public works. So I think that's going to be another one of those things that naturally becomes part of this agreement just by the fact that it will be needed. And that's an important piece. As far as the question on the earmarking, no, an earmark is not a binding situation. I brought that up in my original statement, and I want to clarify. Basically, as Councilman Roman had pointed out, effectively when any of these pilots prior to the one at 885 Bloomfield were adopted, they were kind of married to another project. So the Hilltop pilot went into effect at the same time the high demand fields were being developed, right? The One Sunset pilot was agreed upon at the same time when the township needed to have a plan to pay back debt service for the Verona Flats affordable housing situation. So while they're not earmarked, we can, in theory, spend those dollars on something else. But the problem is those dollars are also part of our budget, right, and have been relied on. As far as debt service being out of the cap, you are correct on that. We do actually have a cap on the amount of debt we're able to take out, but debt service is generally outside the cap, which means that in theory, money can go from one entity to another. At the same point, the tax levy would be significant as a result of that. So there's in any one of these situations, there's obviously a trade-off. Rachel, I appreciate your comments as well. It was good to see you, by the way. I was out walking the dog the other day. Got a wave in there. But I think the One Verona approach is something that we have always prided ourselves on in town. Our former township manager, coined Team Verona as a piece, and everybody was really in that. And I agree over concerns, and even up Brookdale. Just to note, though, that the Board of Ed has a policy for new developments, new people moving to town, that they will put students wherever the class sizes are the smallest. So it's a way that they've mitigated that a little bit, as you know, because you're seeing some students from the west side of town over at Brookdale. But I take your points, and I think moving forward, we're all on the same page with that. As far as Ms. Bachin, your comments, the need for the pilot did not finish. We entered a fourth round of affordable housing. Okay, so the third round of affordable housing was the round that included the building of the Verona Flats building, the set aside in the One Sunset Avenue property, as well as some other areas. That was the third round of affordable housing. That finished right before my time on the council. We had now the fourth round of affordable housing that happened after that. So as a result, we had a need that we had to meet for affordable housing. So how is that done? Well, you have two options. Option number one is to build another all affordable building, which is, once again, a significant expense for the town that we didn't have any pilot agreements to go with in order to finance that, right? Like the Sunset Avenue development helped to finance the Verona Flats property. And that building was not very popular with the community, to be honest. But as I said, I think that was the right thing to do at the time, though I was not on the council. The other option is that when residences are built, there's a set aside. So it previously was 15% for rental units and 20% for purchase units. Now, with our new agreement, moving forward, it's a 20% set aside for everything. So that means for every one unit, you have to build 5, right? Except when we get credits for proximity to transportation and special needs housing, things like that. So we don't have as much control. What happens is if we can't meet our state mandate, which Verona worked very hard to reduce through vacant land adjustments, we had an expert team of professionals, and I encourage everybody, I don't want to spend 30 hours explaining this because that's how long it took in public sessions to go through this. But I encourage everybody to look at those deliberations in depth to understand the affordable housing process. Because the 885 Bloomfield Avenue piece was that last component in that affordable housing. Well, not the last, but one of the last components in the affordable housing. So in order to meet our affordable housing requirement, builders are building. If we do not allow a builder to build, and the builder can challenge the constitutionality of our plan and claim that part of it is deficient, then they can sue and they could win potentially what's called a builder's remedy lawsuit. The builder's remedy lawsuit is the vehicle that allows them to forget any of the zoning really in town and build what they want where they want. And that's even more disastrous than anything else. So the pilot is part of a tool in order to help us negotiate. So when the affordable housing rounds came through, our team, including our manager, our planner, our affordable housing council, worked with all of the different interveners and to negotiate down the impact of the developments. And we worked in closed session as a council as well to do the same thing. And that's why the pilot was used in that circumstance. And that's why we still don't exactly have complete control over, you can't say no to certain buildings because they applied to build at the right time. A lot of the developers wait until the affordable housing round to do it. If that same developer applied tomorrow, they would not have been in the situation where they would have had the legal leverage to build on the same site. And that's unfortunately a issue that we replaced because of state legislation and Supreme Court cases. I would also like to address the $19,000 per pupil number. I'm not exactly sure what the per pupil expense. That number that is cited doesn't actually mean that it costs $19,000 to educate the next student that comes in. So if one more student comes in, it doesn't cost another $19,000. Because in theory, you can add 10 students without having to add facilities, staff, principals, supervision. You may have to add some supplies, things like subscriptions, a Chromebook, stuff like that, right? But for the most part, small increases in student population don't actually have that same impact. In fact, as you have more students on your student roster and your budget numbers are about the same, it actually, the per pupil expenditure goes down. And one of the things the Verona Public Schools has always prided itself on in the board meetings is having one of the lowest per pupil expenditures actually in the comparable districts. So just on that point, if you'd like to understand all of this development stuff more, I am more than happy to sit down with you for hours and talk about it, because it is something that one of the reasons I ran for the council is to limit development. And I am, obviously we were faced with a lot of issues coming in with new developments, but I think that we did the best job that we could. And I'm proud of what we were actually able to reduce. And if you look at surrounding towns like Caldwell or Cedar Grove or Montclair, and construction that's happened there that's changed the character of the communities, that's not something that we allowed in this place. Jed, thank you for your comments as well, and it was a pleasure to meet with you. I think more frequent meetings is always helpful. That sometimes work gets done behind the scenes that is really important, and a combination of that behind the scenes work or a small group between the board and the council can sometimes get things to move a little bit more quickly. So I think a combination of those things is important. To Ms. Grouet's questions, I just want to note first that the developer, as was pointed out previously by my colleagues and myself, wanted to put 60 units on that piece of property. The master plan for the township does not zone anything. It's not a zoning document. The zoning is approved by ordinance by the township. So just want to clarify that that is something that we need to consider. If the council had done nothing during this round and did not negotiate, the developer would have built 60 units because they would have asserted that they had that right to do that. Our experts informed us that the developer had a property right to build more than 28 units, somewhere between 28 and 60. The number that was that we ended up, Mr. O'Sullivan, was what from that negotiation?
The final number?
No. How many the lawyers told us that they could build no matter what?
33. It was approximately, I thought it was 35 or
something like
38.
So it was higher. I will put it, I think it was 38, but we'll put it higher. The negotiation in this case was able to bring that 38 number down to 28. What that did is eliminated apartment buildings on that site that didn't necessarily fit the residential character of that area, and instead allow for a tract of townhomes that extend the townhome development that already exists in Essex Fells. So effectively that did is created a use that would not have that same, it would not have some kind of very different appearance and unsightly look in that place. The only way that 28 unit number was able to be approached was through that pilot agreement. So in reality, we could have had a 38 unit building. We didn't have to have a pilot, but Ms. Gray, you would be the most affected person in the room by having those 10 extra units on that site. So I think it's an important thing that we all understand, that the council doesn't go and say, we want to go out and maybe prior councils did this. We want pilot. In my opinion, the only use of a pilot is to mitigate the number of units and the number of bedrooms in a development. And that was what was done here. So not only are there only 28 units, but each of those units has a max of 2 bedrooms. And as we've seen in comparable developments like Huntington Park on Durrell Street, there's not been that significant of an increase in the population in the schools, because a lot of families want more than 2 bedrooms now. 2 bedrooms is considered small in comparison to what people are looking for in Verona. So I appreciate comments, but I want to set the record straight that the council is not out, at least those who voted in favor, in trying to, just grab up money from the Board of Ed. That's not how it works. This was a tool in order to ensure that we had the least possible development. And I think that's very, very important to note. There's a question of, did the township retain an expert? Yes. We have the law firm McManaman, Scotland & Bauman. Joe Bauman, one of the named partners of the firm, is sitting in the back of the room, who conducted analysis and provided us the advice on that as well. Mr. O'Sullivan, can you speak to the annual service charge piece? I don't have that in my notes.
I will say that the annual service charge is a document of record. There are the pro forma documents, which were part of the ordinance, which authorized the financial agreement. So rather than going through and reading that line by line, I would just, I'm happy to provide that to anybody and point anybody to the portion of the website that is interested in viewing that.
And I can't agree with necessarily the numbers that you provided as far as property tax revenue for those units. I think $550,000 for school property tax is an extraordinarily high number for 28 units. That would mean that each unit is paying like $20,000 in just school taxes, and school taxes are 60% of overall taxes. The average assessed value of a house in Verona, the average house in Verona is like a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, and the number for the overall tax liability is much less than that. And I know that because I actually own the average assessed house in town. So I think we have to be careful. Once again, putting numbers out, we can have our administration and our assessor run those numbers to get what the actual numbers are, so we can have a proper comparison. As far as the question of whether we commit to not having future pilots, I can't commit to that. And the reason I can't commit to that is because, as I said, the pilot is a tool to prevent overdevelopment in this town. So whenever we look at a pilot agreement, we have to balance what are the needs of the town, what are the needs of the schools, what are the needs of all the residents. So every one of these situations, when this comes up, is incredibly fact specific. And for any of us to say, no, we won't have any more pilots, I would love to be able to say that. It would be politically expedient to say that we would never have another pilot agreement. But at the same point, when we look at all of the different factors and our requirements and our obligation to this township, I think that, as I said, pilots should only be used for one purpose. I have no desire to use pilots to take money away from everybody else. The only time that I will use a pilot, and the only pilot that I've ever voted on, has been to reduce unit and bedroom counts. And that was the pilot at 885 Bloomfield. So I think that's really important, but I appreciate your comment as I do everybody else's. But once again, if anybody wants to sit down and go through any of these things, they want to go through numbers, Michelle, I'm happy to sit down with you and Kevin and our tax assessors, and we can go through all the numbers on this. And so we're on the same page. Happy to do it. And we've talked for hours before on the phone. I'm happy to do that again. That line is not shut down. I know we disagree on this, but I think we've always had a respectful relationship. But I just want to make sure that everybody has all of the facts, and I think together that we can do that, because it's an issue that I will be accountable for as a member of this township council, that I will live with for my political career and my future career. And every time I drive down Bloomfield Avenue, I need to know in my heart that we did the right thing. Councilman Roman?
Just to give you kind of a comparison as to how communities look at this. I remember one year down at the League of Municipalities, I was in a seminar about pilots, and the mayor of one of the more industrialized towns boldly stood up and pronounced that he was proud that his town had more pilots than United Airlines. Towns use these to bolster their budgets in a lot of places. They use them, look at Jersey City. A lot of the development is pilot based. There's a lot heavier use of it. We use it to manage development and to shrink development. The question was asked, okay, if we're in control of this, why do we allow large developments? Short answer is that we are not totally in control of what goes on here. The entire effect of affordable housing policy in New Jersey as it's applied to suburban communities is to compel us to densify. It allows, a situation when we go through these rounds, there's a computation or a challenge made to determine our need for additional affordable housing units. It's done through the court system, through Fair Share Housing Center, and they come to us with a need saying that you have to add this many units. A developer who comes in saying, I will meet that need by building these, what are also called 80-20 buildings, where there's a ratio of 20% affordable to 80% market rate, can then make an argument that that they can override your zoning, that they can build denser than your zoning codes allow. That is what goes on through the negotiations of the affordable housing process. Is this need is developed. We then go and negotiate down the need and make arguments as to why we've either met portions of the need or we disagree with the need. We look at individual development parcels and determine if the developments are realistic, and we go and we negotiate with the developer. So every time that you see a large development, I would say almost all of them has come to us proposed much larger. We've given numbers. Deputy Mayor gave, I believe, an 800 unit number roughly. The 360 unit number sticks in my head for what was proposed on 2 tracts of vacant land. So the tract of vacant land that's basically right next to the Afterglow neighborhood as you come into town on Mount Prospect. That's one of 2 tracts of land. And then the other one is basically sort of behind Commerce Court, which is where a wastewater treatment plant exists. Both of those lots, which are undeveloped lots, were proposed for full development of new neighborhoods. And I can absolutely assure you that those developments would have put a lot of kids in the school system. So we looked at that, and we looked at the numbers and the types of housing that were proposed, and we said we had to do something about it. And that was where our strategy came to acquire that land and to conserve it as open space. That land is the property of the Township of Verona. We've put Green Acres designations, or are putting Green Acres designations, with the intent to preserve open space and not develop. That cost us millions upon millions of dollars. We still had to meet our affordable housing need, and that's through other forms of projects. That's the strategy of building Verona Flats, which is 100% affordable development. In other words, not an 80-20 development in which the developer can build 5 market rate units for every affordable unit they built. That development is all affordable, so it met a very substantial portion of our need. That being said, building an all affordable development is not a very profitable enterprise for a developer. So the township ultimately had to make maneuvers in order to make that development financially realistic, including acquiring a substantial amount of land. Again, millions upon millions of dollars. I would say that we spend more time here on this council in the aggregate over the 11 years that I've been sitting here on affordable housing than any other topic. And again, our tactic in affordable housing and in development management overall is to try and minimize the density that is put forth in Verona and to try and minimize the impact on the school systems. So it's this constant back and forth where we're negotiating with developers, trying to figure out what their profit margins are actually going to be, trying to figure out what sort of deals we can strike, what levers we have to pull. We spend a lot of money on excellent legal counsel, excellent land use planners to argue the township's case and try and come up with very creative solutions. Being able to make Verona Flats happen was a huge lift. That was a lot of work by all of our professionals in order to come up with that strategy to avoid, again, hundreds upon hundreds of units. So we don't go into these things being very excited that we, some towns really, really do want these big 5/1 projects. A 5/1 is 5 floors of wood frame construction over 1 floor of concrete, parking deck, and retail on the ground floor. It's basically the most profitable type of building that a developer can build. You see a lot of towns and it's 5/1s all up and down Main Street. We're trying not to do that. Where we do put development in place, there is a specific reason as to why, and it usually has to do with meeting obligations for affordable housing. So that's just kind of the large framework that we operate under. But all 5 of us live here, and we moved to this town for a reason. We like, the feel of living in this quiet suburban community, and we're trying to manage the development. Pilots are a tool in our toolbox. There's a lot of other negotiating tools that we use, but that's our end goal ultimately, is to bring densities down. I'll leave it at that.
All right. At this time, there'll be another public comment period at the end of the meeting. All right. We are moving on to ordinances for introduction. The first ordinance is labeled I-1. Madam Clerk, would you please read the title of this ordinance into the record?
So, Mayor, if I could just interrupt briefly, the following ordinances, the next 3 ordinances are bond ordinances. That would be I-2, 3, and 4. Those, also I-5 and I-6. All of the capital ordinances other than the pool, I would ask if the council would table it. The bond ordinances themselves were distributed to the council late.
5 and 6 we can do. Those were in the packet.
Oh,
5 and 6 are fine.
5 and 6 are in the packet. Okay.
And
Okay, so 2 through 4. So
2 through 4.
2 through 4? Okay.
2 through 4. Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to address those one at a time and do a
Oh.
motion
I
to
apologize.
table on each one of those.
I'm sorry.
No, you're all right.
So we just need to announce for 251 and a half Grove
Okay.
because
I am announcing that the public hearing adoption for 251 and a half Grove Avenue will be carried to the May 18th council meeting.
Thank you.
Is that sufficient for announcement?
Yes, because
Excellent.
we noticed.
Thank you. I was just so excited to skip over that and move
Don't
to
blame me.
something else. All right, so the next ordinance on the agenda is labeled as I-1 on introduction. Madam Clerk, would you please read the title of this ordinance into the record?
Bond ordinance providing for improvement of the municipal pool facility in and by the Township of Verona in the County of Essex, New Jersey, appropriating $100,000 therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $80,000 bonds or notes of the township to finance the cost thereof.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Would somebody move the ordinance?
So moved.
Motion is made by the Deputy Mayor. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Any council discussion?
Do we specifically know what part of the main building, like exactly what this is?
There are some structural repairs to the awnings of the buildings and to some of the roof work on the what would be considered, I guess, the south side of the building is primarily where the majority of the work is needed.
Any other comments? Councilwoman McGrath?
So this isn't covering the pool furniture as well?
It's in addition to pool furniture
It's
as well.
in addition. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other comments? Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Councilwoman Holland,
Yes.
Councilwoman McGrath,
Yes.
Councilman Roman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McAvoy,
Yes.
Mayor Tamboro.
Yes.
Mayor, I-1 will be numbered 2026-18. Will be posted notice of the public hearing on May 18th.
Thank you. All right. I would just like one motion to table ordinances that are labeled I-2, 3, and 4.
So moved.
Motion is made by the Deputy Mayor. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councilman Roman. I just, for clarification, what happened on these ordinances is that the actual text of them was not included in the council packet. So the council did not have the opportunity to review all the ordinances. We did get it today, but several of us felt that it was not appropriate at this point to discuss something for which we didn't. We've seen the projects over the years, but several of us had questions, so that'll be dealt with at the next meeting. So just be aware. The next ordinance on the agenda is labeled I-5. Madam Clerk, would you please read the title of this ordinance into the record? We tabled 2, 3, and 4.
An ordinance to amend ordinance 2026 pool membership fees to increase the number of non-resident memberships.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. No, I'm sorry. I-5
Oh, wait, I'm
is
sorry.
Water capital.
My fault. I apologize. This is for 67. Capital ordinance appropriating 67,500 from the capital improvement fund for various improvements by the Township of Verona.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
It's a little confusing.
Yeah, there was a last minute alteration to the order of the ordinances because we had to introduce other things before these
And then I printed out my wrong order.
so on. So
Amendment.
we are, just to clarify, we are on the one labeled the 67,500 for capital improvements. Would somebody like to move this ordinance?
So moved.
Thank you, Councilwoman McGrath. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Councilwoman Holland. Any council discussion on this? I will note just for the public, this is coming from the Capital Improvement Fund. This would not be bonded money. That's why it's in a separate ordinance than the bond ordinances, which will be discussed in the next week. Any council discussion? Okay, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Sorry, Councilwoman Holland,
Yes.
Councilwoman McGrath,
Yes.
Councilman Roman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McAvoy,
Yes.
Mayor Tamboro.
Yes.
Mayor, it would be, I-5 would be numbered 2026-19, will be noticed in a public hearing, will be held May 18th.
Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is ordinance I-6 as an introduction, an ordinance on introduction. Madam Clerk, would you please read the title of this ordinance into the record?
Water and Sewer Utility Capital Ordinance appropriating $113,000 from Water Sewer Utility Capital Improvement Fund for the various improvements by the Township of Verona in the County of Essex, New Jersey.
Thank you. I will move this ordinance. Is there a second?
Second.
The second is by Councilwoman Holland. Any council discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Councilwoman Holland,
Yes.
Councilwoman McGrath,
Yes.
Councilman Roman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McAvoy,
Yes.
Mayor Tamboro.
Yes.
Mayor, the ordinance will be number 2026-20. It will be noticed in a public hearing held on May 18th.
And for the public's edification, the reason why this is in a separate ordinance is this comes from the Water and Capital Fund, which is paid by water and sewer rates rather than by taxes. So that's why it's in a separate bond. All right, Madam Clerk, the next item on the agenda is ordinance I-7 for introduction. Would you please read the title of this ordinance into the record?
Amending Chapter A 575-7, Verona Community Pool Membership and Other Fees.
Thank you. Would somebody move this ordinance, please?
So moved.
Motion is made by Councilman Roman. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second is by the Deputy Mayor. Any council discussion? Hearing none. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Councilwoman Holland,
Yes.
Councilwoman McGrath,
Yes.
Councilman Roman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McAvoy,
Yes.
Mayor Tamboro.
Yes.
Mayor, so I-7, well, which is really not, will be numbered 2026-21. It'll be noticed in a public hearing held on May 18th.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. The next item on the agenda is ordinance I-8 for introduction. Would you please read the title of this ordinance into the record?
Now it's an ordinance to amend ordinance 2026-26 pool membership fees to increase the number of non-resident memberships.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Would somebody move this ordinance, please?
So moved.
Motion is made by the Deputy Mayor. Is there a second?
Second.
Second is made by Councilman Roman. Is there any council discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Councilwoman Holland,
Yes.
Councilwoman McGrath,
Yes.
Councilman Roman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McAvoy,
Yes.
Mayor Tamboro.
Yes.
Mayor, this ordinance will be number 2026-22, and it will be noticed in a public hearing will be held on May 18th.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, for our consent agenda, we have 2 sets of minutes and 11 resolutions. Would somebody like to, anybody need to pull anything first? Councilwoman?
I'd like to pull K1 and L10
Okay,
for separate vote.
Okay, K1 and L10. And I just want to pull L1 as well. So at this time, would somebody please move K2 and L2 through L9 and L11?
So moved.
Motion is made by Councilwoman McGrath. Is there a second?
Second it.
Second is made by Councilman Roman. At this time, I'll call for public comment on all consent agenda items, including the ones that we pulled. The comment is only for consent agenda items. Hearing none. Actually, Madam Clerk, are we at the top of the?
Yeah, could you scroll down?
On the Zoom.
Well, it'll pop up on the Zoom, so everybody will be at the top if their hand is raised. I just don't know if we are at the top.
Yes.
All right, that's the top. Okay. All right, so just pop back up. There you go. And all the hand
There you
raised
go.
would be at the top. There we go.
There you
That's
go.
good.
Yeah.
Okay, hearing none, I
That is
close
weird.
public comment. Any council discussion on the K2, L2 through L9 and L11? Okay, hearing none, Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Councilwoman Holland,
So clarifying, this is the non-pulled consent agenda.
Correct.
Yep.
Correct.
Yes.
Councilwoman McGrath,
Yes.
Councilman Roman,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McAvoy,
Yes.
Mayor Tamboro.
Yes.
L2 through L9 will be numbered 101 through 108, and 11 will be 109.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Would somebody move
Yeah,
K1, the minutes?
So moved.
Motion is made by Councilwoman McGrath. Is there a second? I'll second them. Any discussion?
I was not in attendance for this meeting, so I asked for the second vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
What are you going to recuse?
No, I'm just going to abstain.
Okay. Councilwoman Holland,
Abstain.
Councilwoman McGrath,
Yes.
Councilman Roman.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McAvoy.
Yes.
Mayor Tamboro.
Yes.
So K1, and that's it, right? We're just doing K1.
Just K1.
Just K1.
Would somebody move
It's four.
L1, please?
So moved.
Motion is made by Councilwoman McGrath. Is there a second?
Second.
Second is by Councilman Roman. I have just some questions on this. I know when we originally conceived Everett Field and went with the
There's
Your
fires
3
all
minutes
over.
are up, Mayor.
Yeah.
It's on override.
you need to put your cell phone in the caddy with all the other cell phones. All right. Anyway, we had talked about having a turf management specialist, and I know that the contractor that's been suggested here is a like a property maintenance company that deals a lot with commercial and residential grass mowing and plantings and things like that. I just wanted to see if we had an idea of what their depth of their experience is. I know they were the most responsive bidder, but does somebody there have a degree from the Rutgers Cook School that specializes in turf management? What level of expertise do they have? Because with the amount of money that we're spending on this field, I want to make sure this is the right company that we choose.
Sure. The contract that is presented to the council tonight will be supplemented by an additional independent party that would service as a greens management consultant. That we are still interviewing those professionals. They will be below the bid threshold, so they will not likely require a formal resolution, but we are reviewing professionals that will act as an independent oversight management firm for the maintenance element.
All right, that is vital. And I
Yes.
think it's important that we keep a very, very close eye on all of that. I know I will be popping over to watch them mow the lawn on occasion because it is that important. Despite my grass allergies, it'll just make me cry the entire time.
Question.
Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Does this is the entire field, includes
Everything,
mulching, all that, or is
it's
that
everything within the fences. So it's maintenance of the lawn. It is mowing, trimming, any additional feeding to the lawn. It also it does not include the outside perimeter, which is the treed and mulched area. That would still fall within the purview of the Public Works Department. But everything inside the fencing is within this contract.
Thank you.
All right,
Please stop.
Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Councilwoman Holland.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilwoman McGrath.
Yes.
Councilman Roman.
Yes, and thank you.
Deputy Mayor McAvoy.
Yes.
Mayor Tamboro.
Yes.
Mayor
Beep, beep,
L1 will
beep,
be
beep.
number 2026-110. Passes 5-0.
All right. Would somebody like to move L10?
So moved.
The motion is made by Councilwoman McGrath. I will second that motion.
Mhm.
Any council discussion?
I've stated on the record almost every single year, is really abhorrent that the state of New Jersey has stolen money from local towns by diverting the energy tax receipts, which has happened for several years under both Republican and Democratic administrations. I do support the restoration of this line item in all of our budgets. I wish they had put the tracker back out. We got to be over about $2 million. So hopefully, as part of the budget process, they'll consider restoring it. And it's important to pass this resolution every year. Thank you.
Thank you. And I will leave it with your sentiments. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Councilwoman Holland.
Abstain.
Councilwoman McGrath.
Yes.
Councilman Roman.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McAvoy.
Please forward to all listed on here. Yes.
Mayor Tamboro.
Yes.
Mayor, number 10 will be number 2026-111, and it passes 4-0 with one abstention.
Thank you. All right. Moving on to, I'm actually going to flip 02 and 01 and go to the discussion allocation of pilot funds from 85 Bluefin Avenue. At this time, I would like to invite Joe Bauman from McBain, Scotland and Bauman to come forward. Mr. Bauman provided us legal advice in the meeting prior. I've asked Mr. Bauman to provide some general, not legal advice, but for the public, an understanding of options available to councils as far as how pilot funds can be deployed, without providing us any legal advice on those options.
Right. Great. Thank you, Mayor, Council. So as we discussed, there are ways in which public bodies generally have and can share pilot revenues with the Board of Education. In our opinion, they're limited to multifamily projects where there would be most appropriate anyway because they impact schools, right? Generally, there is no specific rule about how you would go about sharing that pilot, meaning there's not a predetermined percentage of the annual service charge you might share. There's not a predetermined dollar amount that you might share. So that sharing of the pilot is sort of a to be negotiated, to be determined. It's pretty much at the discretion of the governing body. As I think you suggested in your initial remarks, Mayor, those are subject to annual appropriation every year. So you could reach an agreement with the Board of Education to share a pilot, and then you would look to the governing body each year to make it include it in their budget and make an appropriation. We talked about different ways to share the pilot, and some of the suggestions that I posited to you were things like establishing a capital fund. So agree to perhaps take a percentage of the pilot and put it into a fund to share with the Board of Education for capital improvements, by way of example, as opposed to a straight out allocation that sort of goes right into their budget. And through an agreement with the Board of Education, I believe there's a lot of opportunity to figure out how those funds could actually be used in terms of, like this example, a capital fund. At the end of the day, though, the Board of Education and the school district only have the powers to educate children, and you don't. So there is still a limitation to the extent that you can be involved specifically in how those pilots might get allocated for operating expenses. For example, if you just shared the pilot with the Board of Education, I do not believe you'd be able to direct necessarily how that money would get spent specifically in their operating budget. But there is a myriad of opportunities to sit down with the Board of Education, as has been described in this meeting, come to an agreement about what's the best way, maybe engage in a open, transparent opportunity dialogue about where the monies get spent, both on both sides, exploring, shared services, things you've already done, but then coming up with a way in which the pilot could be shared, either through sort of this suggestion that could be like a trust fund for capital improvements, or perhaps just again allocation to their budget. And that is a dialogue I'm seeing more and more throughout the state of New Jersey. Conversations about how to address, particularly as has been said here, and as everyone's well aware, your problem is not unique in New Jersey. Board of Educations are struggling with this, and as are municipalities with budget constraints. You don't need to look very far to see budgets that are struggling with big deficits on a municipal and a Board of Education level. So you actually approached me about this weeks ago. We've had an opportunity to share, and we had a nice meeting today. So I'm glad we've been able to explore it, and I look forward to talking to you more about it as you begin to engage with the Board of Ed on the best way to work through these challenges.
Mr. Baumann, in your experience, what did most of the agreements look like?
I think mostly they're just a percent. They come up with a percent. I don't think there's a rhyme or reason necessarily. A percentage of the pilot, for example.
As far as a capital, like in one of those.
That I think is a more unique scenario.
Okay.
Yeah.
Other questions? Councilwoman Holland.
Sure. During our discussion earlier, I mentioned, and I did state in public comment earlier, that a concern that I have is kind of the general lack of transparency, and that there's opportunities for more of that. In your experience, or just drawing upon your expertise, do you think it's possible that if there were any kind of sharing agreement, that we could incorporate terms into that to enhance transparency for the public benefit, possibly on both sides, but in particular for our colleagues at the Board of Ed?
Yeah, I do for sure. Barring things that are clearly by law not permitted to be shared, right? There's clear privacy issues and other things that simply can't be shared or shouldn't be shared. But any dialogue, I think, or any agreement with the Board of Education presumably would have a much more robust sharing of information, perhaps, than has happened in the past for no bad intent. Maybe just hasn't happened. So I think there's an opportunity for that for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't think there's bad intent, but I do think that there's opportunity. So
I agree.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Thank you, Mr. Baumann.
All right. Thank you.
All right. On to the open burn ordinance discussion.
This was amended from a few meetings ago just to more simplify it. There is now an exemption for certain the burning of trees and twigs, and I believe also we have removed it has to be discharged straight through a stack.
You removed what?
There was a concern that
That's still in the copy that we
It's
have.
absolutely still in the copy that we have.
D3.
What is it? I couldn't hear what he said. What are we talking about?
It's section 2026-21-2D3.
3 is removed.
No.
this is
Not-
the
not
wrong
in
version.
It is?
Yeah, Brian, we had sent the.
All right. Well,
I'll-
if that's not what's in the packet, I think we need to wait until next meeting until we have the proper ordinance.
If I may, I did have a
Councilwoman,
little
go
bit of feedback on this.
Sure.
So if this isn't the right ordinance, so be it. Maybe you've made further improvements since then. But I can see that some improvements were intended to be made in this draft. I do appreciate that there was an effort to include an exemption for recreational fires. So like if people have fire pits, but as was noted, it does still include the requirement that it be through a stack or chimney. And that definition, I think it's not clear if that definition allows for like the standard fire pit that people might get from like a Home Depot. It also says not if burning items prohibited above. And then it says that the items that are prohibited are rubbish, garbage, dangerous material, trade waste, structures, and plant life. And then under plant life, it includes tree branches, which I really struggle because I think logs in somebody's fire pit are probably a version of a tree branch. So I just think we're still falling short on this ordinance and likely capturing a lot of people's kind of recreational fire pits, which is kind of a nice thing to do in the spring and the fall when you get like those chillier evenings. But mindful of the fact also that we've been under a drought and there have been burn restrictions. But I do think that there's value in having an ordinance that's prohibiting somebody just like lighting a match for all of their vegetative waste. But like, I think we have more to do before I would feel comfortable introducing this ordinance. So I hope that some of that feedback's captured in whatever revisions were made.
Yeah, just
That
so the
was
council's
all.
clear, the revisions that were made actually dramatically changed the ordinance.
Great.
So I've just sent it to the clerk so she can send it to you. But the ordinance now actually just defines the fact that you can't burn, I'll call it garbage. And then it says that you can burn, for instance, your small twigs as kindling and whatnot. So it forgets the smokestacks, it forgets everything else and says you can't burn your garbage, basically.
Great.
So you can go through the definitions. And if you have questions, if you think we should add more, subtract more, that's great. But I think you'll be happy with it because it's completely different than what you have.
Excellent. I love the idea that our code enforcement aren't going to be,
Trying
parsing
to figure
what's
out
a
what's going on.
log and what's a
No.
tree branch and things like that. So thank you.
We will not have to supply them with rulers to measure like that. Wooden ones that they can put in the fire. Yes,
Quick-
Deputy Mayor.
Just a quick correction. In 262-21, we could actually take out, it says trade water. I mean, it's
I
kind
think
of,
that was a typo. It meant
Yeah,
trade
well, I don't-
waste.
but even trade waste is trade water. It's kind of the same thing.
So
All right, again,
that
what
is
you're
a
looking at is not even close.
So I would
Okay.
suggest that we
Throw
put
what
this-
you have in the garbage.
Yeah.
This is literally two sections, A and B.
It needs to go
You have-
back.
You have pages of
on-
nonsense. We
We're supposed to burn
we
it.
narrowed it down to 2 paragraphs.
It needs
Alex
to go
is
back
gonna
on new
burn his.
business for next meeting.
Next week.
Yes. Okay. I will open for one more public comment session. Madam Clerk, would you reread the public comment rules, please?
Anyone from the public wishing to speak on any matter, if you're attending by Zoom, please raise your hand by pressing the raise hand button on your monitor. If you're dialing in by phone, press *9. If you are attending in person, please raise your hand and be acknowledged before approaching the lectern. Once recognized, clearly state only your name and township residence for the record. You're not required to provide your street address. However, if you do, please note that these meetings will be posted on the township's YouTube channel and addresses will not be redacted for any purpose. You'll have 4 minutes to address the council. There'll be no cross dialogue during this public portion. And after everyone wishing to speak has been heard, the council may address your comments and/or questions.
Thank you.
Hi, Maria Conti, Verona resident. Thank you, first of all, for this conversation. It was very enlightening. I'm happy to be seeing this dialogue begin between the council and the schools. I just felt as though the conversation sort of took a turn into, why pilot programs. I think that you did a really great job of explaining the use of them as a tool and how much it's helped to contain development in Verona. I think that the question that I have, and I'm suspecting that a lot of my friends out in the audience have, is why until now have we only why is it that it's taken this long to only begin to discuss the sharing? I really appreciate the guests that you brought in today to discuss what those sharing agreements can look like. But, when I sit here and I heard about Hilltop, and that was long before, I lived in Verona and any of you were elected. It just kind of defies logic that eventually that question of, those funds are being used by the town for town things would not eventually trickle down into, well, the Board of Education would have gotten 50% or more of a property tax. When is it going to be time to pay the piper, right? So I'm really happy that we've begun the conversation. I think that we can't talk about pilots anymore without talking about including the Board of Ed. It's given the situation that boards of education are facing now, I just don't think it's right for the town to keep it all without an open dialogue with that other body. And we won't even talk about county government because they don't need a share. But that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Conti.
Hi, my name is Charity Dacey. I'm a resident in Verona here, have 2 daughters. They attended music in elementary and middle, Mandarin all the way through, art all the way through. I have two questions and just a comment. I wanted to know what's the amount of remaining affordable houses in this fourth round. The state number of 172 was thrown out at one point, but then I heard a lower number that was based on something else. So I just wanted to clarify that. I also wanted to check in on when was the shared services last discussed, expanding beyond the services that we currently have, because obviously in New Jersey, municipalities and school districts are separate legal entities, and state law, the Uniform Shared Services and Consolidation Act, make it really clear that they can merge back office costs like health insurance. And since health insurance seems to be about 30% of this debacle, and that's only growing over the next, I would say more than next year, but many years. A lot of schools, keep their governing bodies and schools independent, but merge on those things. So I'm curious if Cedar Grove, Verona, Roseland, there's other shared services. What has been the last time that there was a discussion about that with our school board and then other municipalities and school boards? Because I think the health insurance funds, the FIHs in Central Jersey Health Insurance Fund and the South New Jersey Regional Employee Fund Benefits Fund have reduced their costs by like 35% if you look online by doing that. So other county shared services, I know we don't want to talk about the county, but Passaic does that. And that's why Hilton and all the other small towns have that bargaining power and, for sheer numbers. So they negotiate those lower premiums. Finally, in interest of moving forward, I just want to throw something else out there. And this was when it was last discussed in 2022. In a month from now, June 5th, is National Gun Violence Awareness Day again. And I know, Mayor Tambora, you stated you didn't think that we should be lighting up our township facility for something ideological. And I understand you said that it was veiled as a gun safety issue, and that's what the proclamation that we have in place says, et cetera. But the same organizations that support this are also very much trying to limit gun rights and so on. And I think a good portion, based on the number of gun permits that we have in Verona of residents, do not support this. You went on and on about that. So I'm opposed to lighting up the building orange for that purpose. And my request is simply that preventing gun violence has been framed as an ideological and partisan divide in American politics. However, there's significant evidence suggesting that framing this in this way is completely inaccurate. Research, public opinion polling, and legislative actions indicate that a broad, non-ideological consensus exists, particularly regarding safety measures, which is often obscure. Proclamation. I'm again raising this issue 4 years later, requesting that the Verona Town Hall go orange on July 5th or June 5th, 2026, for what most agree that gun violence awareness is actually a public health issue. And in the research as well as practice. So rather than framing this again as an ideological issue, as it was previously characterized, I think that's really out of date. And I respectfully request that we join 300 landmarks, buildings, and stadiums across the United States, along with 170 mayors and city officials who participate, 45 of
Thank
which...
you, but your time is up.
Yeah, that's
I
it.
appreciate it. Thank you.
So you get the gist.
Okay.
Especially in light of
All right.
the
Mrs. Stacy,
Palmetto venue
Mrs. Stacy,
event.
your time is up.
Ish.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Yes, Mrs. McHugh.
Hi, thank you all. My name is Mary Ellen McHugh. I'm a resident of Verona. Thank you all for your time, and also thank you in advance for partnering and working in collaboration with the Board of Ed to make our schools, keep our schools as amazing as they currently are. I just have two comments or questions. One is regarding shared services as they're currently known. I know, Mayor, you said that it's not quite the actual definition, but we'll go with it. Where are the services that are supplied to the schools by the town? Where are they outlined? for public review? And also, are they quantified? Like a dollar value, maybe an annual value of one to the other? And then in addition, do they include the services provided by the schools, including building and field use for summer playgrounds, rec track, rec basketball, and other programs? Because I know that I don't think the town pays the schools for building and field use throughout the year. So there's value to that as well. And then just one comment regarding the addition of 10 students, where the schools can realize some economies of scale, Mayor. But at what point are the added students creating diseconomies of scale, where the cost increases, resulting in cuts made to the staff and programs in the schools? I propose it is somewhere between the hypothetical 10 students and the actual 43 students that enrolled. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Battersby.
Hello, my name is Will Battersby. I'm a Verona resident. So I really do want to commend you all for this commitment to working more closely with the Board of Ed, and we will obviously be sort of putting their feet to a very friendly fire as well to do that. One of the things I did want to just actually sort of put on record for those of you who don't have kids in the music program, maybe don't have kids, whatever, but at the present time we have over 600 kids in town studying music, from our elementary schools through our high schools. It's the largest group of kids you've got doing any extracurricular activity in this town. So I think it's a great idea that when you guys are obviously focused on your priorities, Everett Field drives me crazy for the record, but whatever, it's happened. I think that finding that sort of balance and that synchronicity between you guys and the Board of Ed, so that the expenditure of our tax money actually represents the values in town, right? And not just the siloed things that you guys obviously have to deal with. And we super appreciate what you do. We super appreciate what the board does. But don't forget that massive number of kids who study music in this town. Music is the one thing that is scientifically proven to increase academic results, schools, quality of schools drives property values drives taxes. So I think there's this great synchronicity. One Verona sounds like a great idea. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Hi, Dana Bachin again. I just want to thank you for clarifying some of the pilot stuff. I have lived in this town my whole life. I'm a lifelong resident. I have seen it change dramatically. And although I know you've worked hard and you've tried to prevent growth is still something that is happening whether we like it or not. And it almost seems like the cards are really stacked against everyone. Like there's really no hope that this is not going to happen. I still am not sure what if the alternative of not having a pilot that they build more and they pay full taxes and then the town generates more income and the schools generate more income and the town is more crowded, but it's paid for. So I feel like, are we just going to give it away for free and it's going to happen anyway? Should we consider just letting these builders build what they want and paying full taxes? So the question is that the alternative? What is the alternative to a non-pilot? They just build more, but they still pay full taxes.
Thank you. Mr. Barrows.
Hi, everyone. Chris Barrows, Verona resident. I'll echo what everyone said. Thank you for everything today. I think everyone feels more informed. I want to go back to something that got said earlier, which was talking about taking the time to meet even twice a year with the Board of Ed. That's a two-way street. Totally get that. One of the pieces that got mentioned was transparency of that. I think if the town even knew that one of those meetings is public and they're going to see that, it's valuable to them. The other thing to think about if that goes forward is to also think in a cyclical nature. You've got a cycle of things that happen, but the schools have a very cyclical nature that you have to consider, but it can make that work really well to find a time that's just perfect. So just want to put that in mind. And last but not least, on the shared services piece, I love this conversation happened. I want to bring up one thing just as you have those conversations, as you consider the sharing of pilot and all of that as the opportunity is there. I want to speak to when I had a chance as a small business owner, which is, it's something I do as a small part of what I do. We were doing an event at Threefold on Small Business Night. It was a business initiative. The talent that came out that night was musicians from the high school, and they participated and they performed. They performed for us at all of our major events. We have librarians and other services coming, and former teachers teaching students in our library, getting more students in our library. And I can speak to that personally because that's transparency. I am a library board member and treasurer. So when I say that, I just hope you consider that additional thing that does not actually have a money number attached to it. But if you think about the cost of pulling in a musician to sing the national anthem and all those costs over time, there's another service that as you're calculating that, I just want you to put into that consideration. And if you've had a chance, even though I would just encourage you, and I'm hoping people listening, if you go back and watch the students pour their heart outs at that Board of Ed meeting, I think it's impactful for this entire town, the people in this room, the people at home. But I'll just hope you think about those things. I thank you. This has been a very, I think, productive conversation overall. We can't solve anything today or in this next 24 hours, but next year is going to be difficult. So the path has to start today. So thank you.
Thank you. At this time, sorry, Mr. Conti, come on.
Thank you. Rob Conti, Verona resident, VMPA board member. And I want to thank everyone for the education that I've gotten tonight about pilot programs. That had not been my primary focus, but I did want to learn more about it. And everything I've learned, I know about pilot programs, I've learned recently, and most of it from my wife. But I do have a question about it. When a friend of mine rang the doorbell today, he was stumping for the primary election, and we got chatting, and we were talking about these pilot programs. He asked me a question that I was embarrassed to not know the answer to, and that is there a legal prohibition of usage of these pilot funds to be disseminated to the county and board at the discretion of the town? And I said, I really don't know. I know that it's not something I choose to do. So while I completely understood the motives for choosing a pilot program, I'm not sure if I understand the usage of it afterwards. When you say that it is either earmarked or allocated as part of the budget, does it need to be? Or could you allocate the portion of it that would otherwise have been the town's portion in a regular tax situation? In addition to that, I just wanted to make one quick sort of impassioned statement. We talked a lot tonight about shared services, sharing the information that we as the Verona population need to know. And I would just ask you to share one more thing with us, the priorities of this town. When we made the impassioned plea at the Board of Education, we knew that it was not anything to do with the town council. We knew that there were difficulties and difficult choices to make, but we implored them to listen to what we consider to be a core value and defining characteristics of this town, and they heard us. And I hope that in a similar way, the council will, in the future, be inclined to be collaborative with the board to share our priorities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Conti. All right, at this time, I close public comment. I can address some of these things as best I can. Going back to Mrs. Conti, I think is a couple of the other questions. So why, I think the question was, why do we wait until now to discuss sharing? I can't comment on any of the pilot agreements that were entered into as far as that prior to my being on the council. I think you heard my comment that I wasn't there, but I think it was the best option that they had at the time. Part of the issue with a lot of these pilots was that they were entered into at the same time there was a significant capital expense. When we bond for those capital expenses, there's an annual debt service payment on the capital expenses. So what a lot of these pilots look like is the revenue coming in from that pilot is equivalent to the bond payment going out. and the bonds are for 30 years and the pilots are for 30 years. That's typically how that works. The pilots don't have to be for 30 years, but that's just how they've been. So you'll see a correlation between that. And then you'll notice as the pilot revenue sometimes increases in those projects because the value of things goes up. You'll also see the debt service payments go up as well at the same time. And that's part of the reason why that's the case. What I can tell you is that the most recent pilot project is not tied to anything else. Do we have $300 million of other needs in this town? Something like that. If we, finally redid our whole water treatment plant, built a public safety complex, fixed every building that we have, fixed every road, there are plenty more needs than we have even bonding capacity for, right? So that's, part of that issue. So that's why I think it didn't happen until now. I can tell you that there was discussion. There was a previous, I attended as a member of the public, meeting between the council and the Board of Ed many years ago. And at that point, a council member at the time suggested that the council and the Board of Ed pay each other every time they used a building or, a rec field or whatever. This is how far we've gotten, right? To a point where we're actually discussing what we're talking about. So I would, if you can find a video of that, I would watch it because it was a fascinating meeting for sure. On to the question of Ms. Dacey as far as when were shared services last discussed. Shared services are constantly being discussed. And you, Mr. O'Sullivan's meeting regularly, right, with the superintendent, you're talking about new things. The last signed updated agreement we have, I think going to Mrs. McHugh's point, is available online. And we can, if you send the municipal clerk an open request, she can get it to you if you can't find it. Does anybody have a printed copy of it up here that I can borrow?
The MOU or
the printed MOU?
Oh, no, I don't have it.
Anybody have one? Okay. It's something we keep looking at, but you can certainly get a hold of it. It's not a secret document. We all share and discuss it. And even in conversations that I was having the manager this week, we were trying to figure out some other shared service things that we can do. But we're, minds are open, but that's another conversation that we have to have. I mean, years ago, I had suggested like IT as a shared service, but that didn't seem to be a viable option based on talking to parties and things like that. So largely that would be a shared service that would presumably be provided by the district to us, but that's a piece of it. As far as the number of affordable housing units, Ms. Stacey, you can get the entire affordable housing plan. It's available to the public. I would encourage you to read the entire thing. That'll have all that information that you need in it. As far as your comments on some previous statements regarding lighting the building, I would refer you to the ordinance that the township passed regarding the lighting of buildings. When I originally had an objection, I was noting that, yes, there's not 100% agreement in this town without specifically taking a position. And that was misinterpreted by many because people didn't come and talk to me about that, right? But you'll find that one of my concerns was that we didn't actually have a capacity or an ordinance that decided when we did these things, right? So the council passed an ordinance that deals with our flag raisings and the lighting of the building and under what circumstances, how many days, which holidays. And I did vote in the affirmative of that. And one of the days or the periods of that is for gun violence. So you can look at that ordinance. My vote is on that, and I encourage you to look at that on the record, and certainly, speak to me before making other public statements regarding that. And that'll be, I think that record speaks for itself. You'll also find my signature on a gun violence proclamation from the same meeting that was discussed in, which was incorrectly put out as I didn't sign the proclamation, but in the same place that was said, there was actually a picture of the proclamation with my signature on it. So just another one of those things that I think was fed by misunderstanding. And I think going back to the record, you will see that as well. At our upcoming council meeting, there'll be a resolution addressing Gun Violence Prevention Month and all of those things, and you'll see that in June. As far as the health insurance trusts, I would remind, I think I talked about this at the beginning of the meeting, but the Township is in the BMED, which is a cooperative health insurance purchasing collaborative, and the Board of Education is in a health insurance trust through like, I don't know how many hundreds of employer units are in it. But pretty much nobody at this point, no boards of education or school boards, are on their own buying health insurance because the risk pool is so great. And if you have one bad year of usage experience rates, your numbers could go way, way, way up. So I would encourage you. I think at this point, we can't have the same health insurance plans as the school district because they have collective bargaining agreements for teachers and principals. We have collective bargaining agreements for our office and DPW workers, the OPIU, as well as our PBA, and their health insurance options that are determined in those collective bargaining agreements and the school collective bargaining agreements as well. And there's also a difference in the town employees get certain town employees get healthcare after retirement, which is an expense, whereas most of the Board of Ed workers' healthcare and retirement is actually paid by the state of New Jersey through the Teachers Pension Annuity Fund. So the board actually doesn't pay for that as well. So there's some differences there, but we do participate in those funds. And one of the items that I brought up to Mr. O'Sullivan at one point in a prior meeting when we were talking about the budget with healthcare as a big driver is using some of my experience as I'm a consultant in labor relations. Specifically, one of the main things I do, in addition to grievance adjudication, is negotiate labor contracts. And I have some expertise in options as far as providing other health insurance options that can both save money for the town and for individuals, not by changing the entire plan, because that's something that needs to be negotiated, but by offering additional choices to incentivize people to take on lower cost plans. So it's something that we brought up before. I would encourage you to take a look at that. Just trying to, now I can't read my handwriting, so I apologize if I did not hit on something. Going back to Mrs. McHugh, once again, I would look at that document. They certainly, we put cost estimate on what we provide, not only the exact services in there, but also all of these other ancillary things that we provide. I think we'd have to come to an agreement on what, the facility rental is and, and stuff like that as well. As far as numbers going into the schools, I think to be fair to the Board of Ed, really the biggest cost increase is if you have a special ed student that has to go out of district. And some of that is borne by the budget. Others, you get back an extraordinary special ed aid. So the board would have to give you those numbers, and I'm sure they would. And they're actually represented in their budget. So if you can get a copy of that, that would certainly be helpful. Going to Mr. Battersby, once again, I appreciate you're pointing out the number of people involved in music programs. And I think that I've supported our music programs my entire 18 years in Verona, from attending concerts to going on overnight trips to helping at fundraisers, providing EMS coverage for band competitions, and constantly being available to help our students. I think my record speaks for that. And I've done that for a long time. It's not a political thing; it's just the right thing. And I think that my students have always come first and foremost, and I appreciate. And I've made the point over the years that our music programs are the place where everybody belongs, and that is so important when we're dealing with students who need a place to be and go. So not only is there that academic piece of this, but there's also that psychosocial piece that is so incredibly important, especially in Verona, that just does such an amazing job with that. So I said I'm not going to necessarily comment on the choices the board makes, but I think you certainly know my opinion. I would like that out there. And as far as interesting number, I think you How many people in the VBSL? Do you remember how many they told us in the
There's
VBSL?
definitely over 500.
Yeah. So when we look at numbers up and down, just throwing that out there, I think I said 700 last meeting. I think it was under that, but we'll put it out there as well. Going back to Mrs. Bachin, yes, growth is happening. We are trying to. I think we're all trying to stunt that growth as much as possible, because here's the problem. And if you want to sit down and just talk about the finances of this, I could sit for hours and discuss this because I'm a big nerd. But the reality of it is, if you kind of let development happen, if you have to build a school because of development, that's the nightmare scenario. If you have to hire so many more teachers because of development, not only do you have salary but fringe. If you would just let development go, so I would estimate in that case that the actual cost between building a building and hiring more staff and resources and all of that stuff would far be beyond what the Board of Ed would realize in tax revenue. Our town would be packed like sardines in a can, which we certainly want to avoid as well. But I'm happy to go through this with you because I love talking about it. Mr. Barrows, I appreciate your comments as well. Going to Mr. Conti, I think there's no, as I said, there's no legal prohibition on, and as Mr. Baumann pointed out, sharing that pilot money. But what has happened is that debt service and the pilot are kind of happening at the same time. So as I mentioned, but Councilman Roman clarified in his statement, or it might have been Deputy Mayor McAvoy, but the 1 Sunset Avenue money that we still don't even have was part of the conversation as far as being able to finance the Verona Flats building. So right now, that's been coming out of general fund for that as well. So that's a piece of it. I'm just not done right yet, but I'll get right to you. And as far as talking on our priorities, I would encourage everybody to watch our council meetings. I've been on this council for 5 years with these same council members, and which is unusual to actually have a council that is consistent for this long. And I will say that I think this council has been very open about what our priorities are and meeting those priorities. One of the problems that we continue to face is that our needs outweigh our resources, right? Board of Ed is having the same problems. We need to do much more, right? We've talked about these big infrastructure projects, right? We've needed a new police station since 1977 or 1975 or something like that. All right. It is now 2026. And that hasn't been done. And that is a project that will cost in the tens of millions of dollars to do that and fix a firehouse that's crumbling, right? So some of our priorities are developed because it's things that we want to see for the town moving forward, the growth and change that we want to see in the town. Some of our other priorities happen because they are forced upon us, right? Like getting this affordable housing plan done, dealing with our public safety infrastructure, dealing with our water and sewer infrastructure, right? And these things take massive amounts of time and resources. So when we sit down and talk about our priorities, I think you can look at where we're spending our time and energy, certainly as one. Because if I listed all of my priorities, you wouldn't believe me because there's so many of them, they would all conflict, right? So I think that's a big piece of it to be aware of. But I appreciate you asking. Once again, happy to talk to you about where I see the town going. And I would encourage you, my campaign site is still active as well. And you can log on to that and actually see my priority list that I published for the public edification. And we have a conversation starting there, but I want to read a lengthy, it's like a 15-page document to everybody. So that's a lot of priorities, right? Councilwoman Graff.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick things. So several of you in your public comment, again, reiterated that pilots, they're taking money away from schools. Again, the budget for the school board, as I understand it, as been articulated tonight, is, they're allowed to increase by 2% of their existing budget. So again, like this perception that the pilots that, a regular a housing development that's taxed at the regular rate is somehow better. That's not what our understanding is. That's not part of the formula. Now, I want to give space to the fact that we are, not on the Board of Ed, neither is our town manager. And so maybe there's something that we're missing, though he has been in constant conversations with the finance individuals on the Board of Ed, but that's really essential. However, the pilots, they do take assessed value out of the equation. And so from a taxpayer point of view, it makes us pay more in school taxes, but then the town is getting this fee, which then helps to offset the tax rate of the municipality. So it's sort of a wash for the taxpayer. And we are just going to have to, unfortunately, since we're done with public comment, continue the conversation. And I also want to give, if someone is listening to this recording or is online and really, can show me the math, people who know me both in and outside of Verona on this issue, I'm like, I really want to understand the math here. Let's talk about it with actual numbers. So I just want to say that that's important. And the other thing that in terms of priorities, I'm just going to say at a very high level, the health and safety of our township is really important to me. And that is a priority to me. And so as much as I love the music program, again, when we're thinking about, well, do we have to make cuts to reduce our police force in order to, give the Board of Ed more money to use for multiple purposes? Those are really tough decisions to make, because on the other hand, we have a lot of residents who are very concerned about safety, about traffic safety. They wanted us to we need to have a certain size police force because the town is growing and because of the corridors that we're in, because of, past issues that we've had with cars being stolen and people speeding and concerns with pedestrian safety. So these are very tough decisions to make. Just to go back to Ms. Stacy on gun violence prevention, we have, as the mayor already mentioned, since that discussion back in 2022, we did change our ordinances and we do light our buildings every year for Gun Violence Prevention Day. But what we don't do is something that we did when I was an advocate for this issue when I co-led the group Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America in Essex County. We used to take very visible and public pictures with advocates who came to us dressed in orange, and we would wear orange, the deputy mayor would wear orange tie. We would all have, our orange ribbons, and we would take a picture, and that would accompany that. And instead, the recent practice in recent years has been to just do it as a resolution, which is not as visible. I miss taking that picture, and I would love to take a picture this June. And the gun violence prevention advocates already sent an email to the mayor and to myself asking for a proclamation. I would love to do a traditional proclamation this year. So thank you so much for raising that. Thank you. And that's the only comment I have on your comment. I'll stay afterward the meeting to talk to more residents. Thank you.
All right. At this time, we have made. I'm sorry, Councilman Holland.
Yeah. Thanks. So I would just like to add, and I'm not going to belabor the point. I feel like several points have been exhaustively belabored. But I do just want to bring up the fact that this is not a new issue, right? If you can do some of your research, and I think Mr. Tamboro has indicated that, there have been prior council discussions with the Board of Ed about sharing services, about quantifying those shared services, about sharing pilot money, going back over a decade. I think the first meeting that I became aware of was when I first moved to this town in 2012. So this is not a new issue. And so I think this goes back to Ms. Conti, your comment, why is it taken so long to have this discussion? I don't think it's taken a long time to have this discussion. I just think it's not always been productive. And I think there was a gentleman who's since left who kind of pointed out that maybe there's a siloing and maybe there's that opportunity for enhanced dialogue. And what I would say as a call to action to you as residents is to remain engaged, right? So if we go back to having no residents speaking on this issue and asking these questions, then it'll be another 4 years before this is addressed again. And that's what it was. Like when I looked back, I think it was addressed in 2012. And then maybe the meeting that was referenced, I think was like approximately 2016 or something like that. It would go in these cycles. There would be accusations on both sides, but ultimately not a productive dialogue. And what I'm really interested in is enhancing that transparency and us having a more productive dialogue in a public forum. And that's really my next comment. There's been some public statements that were made that suggest that there could be meetings between the Board of Ed and the council that aren't in a public forum. That's just simply not legal. So any meetings between us as a body and them as a body would be completely public. There would be a public comment portion. You would have the ability to watch that meeting and attend that meeting. So while small groups or like individuals can have one-on-one conversations or any conversations where there isn't a quorum, if there's a quorum of individuals, we would have to do that at an open public meeting. So there's not like backroom deals that are going to be done between the governing bodies. But of course, you can have the regular communication between the superintendent and the manager. And I think that is a productive dialogue as well. But having that open discussion also aids transparency, especially for parents and residents. Those are the only two remarks that I was going to focus on. I think there's been a lot of response. But of course, please continue to email me, communicate with me any way you see fit. I'm very available. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. We previously passed a resolution to go into executive session. Mr. O'Sullivan, do you anticipate any formal action being taken?
No, we've covered executive session.
Oh, because we did that other thing before.
Yeah.
Okay. Forgot about that. That was fresh in my mind. All right. I will hear any motion anybody would like to make.
Move to adjourn.
Councilman Roman makes the motion to adjourn. Councilman McGrath seconds the motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone.